Chapter 1528. Cultivator aristocratic families are really unfathomable. Although Xiao Hua's expression didn't change as he watched the roaring monster gradually disappear, his heart had long since turned upside down. Let's not talk about being able to use a magic tool while still in the qi refining stage. Let's not talk about being able to teach a complete cultivation technique to the main family's disciples. Just this monster, that spirit-seeking talisman, that soul-absorbing bell, and other strange methods cannot be underestimated. And that Jinghua City's Zhu clan, perhaps because they were in the limelight back then, they were able to shake the cultivator sections. That's why they suffered an unexpected calamity and were implanted with talismans. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua unconsciously pinched his chin. He was thinking a little too far. In the past 2 years, Xiao Hua had been practicing diligently, and at the same time, he had also taken out all the cultivation methods that he could practice and read them. He had basically finished reading the Zhu family's booklet. What was recorded in it was completely different from the cultivation methods and talismans of the current Xi country's cultivation world. It only talked about souls and talismans. It was also very different from the talismans that Xiao Hua had obtained from Xiao Nan's Cheng family. Although Xiao Hua could somewhat understand it, he was still more confused. Of course, that book didn't talk about talismans in detail. It only said that talismans were magical powers left behind from ancient times and were recorded in a strange language. That's all. Then, it talked about the Zhu clan's failed attempts to break talismans. Of course, from this little content, Xiao Hua faintly felt that these things were extremely useful. However, Xiao Hua didn't have the slightest clue as to where and how to use them. Perhaps, after I learn talismans in the future, I'll be able to thoroughly understand the secrets of this booklet and find a reason. Xiao Hua patted his forehead and bitterly smiled at his own thoughts. At this time, Xiao Hua had already obtained 26 number plates. Adding his own, that was a total of 27 number plates, more than double his previous estimate of 12 number plates. This harvest was more than enough for the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciple selection this time. Xiao Hua also didn't want to attract too much attention, so he descended and sat on a large red rock, preparing to quietly wait for the arrival of dawn. However, just as Xiao Hua sat down, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. Oh my, how could I forget Xue Xue? Recalling Xue Xue's rude and unreasonable appearance when she had just entered the illusion array, Xiao Hua couldn't help but think of Fairy Hongxia's beautiful and understanding eyes. And in front of Kai Hongfeng, Fairy Hongxia resolutely prepared to stand up for Xiao Hua, valiant and formidable. Maybe she has already joined the Huanhua sect? It's been 2 years since we last met, so she must have made a breakthrough in her cultivation. Let's just say she's in the 11th layer of qi refining. Thinking up to this point, Xiao Hua's heart seemed to be filled with lofty sentiments. He couldn't sit still anymore. Clenching his fists, he stood up and laughed brightly. Damn it, I'm also in the 10th layer of the aura refining realm. From today onwards, I'm no longer a toad. Hee, a white swan. Can I eat your flesh? At this moment, Xiao Hua seemed to have changed into another person. His face once again carried a trace of laziness and confidence, and there was even a hint of craftiness in his eyes. It was a far cry from the previous Xiao Hua's deadpan appearance. It was also this strange temperament that caused Xue Xue's heart to be instantly planted with feelings. This was much more lethal than any pretty boy. Concubine, dual cultivation, concubine. Xiao Hua didn't know why, but he suddenly thought of the immortal beauty sect that Xue Xue had mentioned. In his mind, Xue Xue's figure and Fairy Hongxia's face also appeared. Oh my, this isn't some inner demon, right? Xiao Hua hurriedly gathered his thoughts and thought to himself, Xue Xue doesn't know. She thinks that I've recovered my cultivation within 2 years. But in reality, I've cultivated from the 4th layer of qi, refining all the way to the 10th layer of qi, refining without any bottlenecks or sluggishness. This inner demon, I really have to be careful. And let's not talk about this for now. I better go find Xue Xue. After all, I came here with her. Don't hurt her heart. Xiao Hua urged his transcendence energy and used the flight technique. Just as he was about to fly into the air, two divine senses swept over from his left. When they saw Xiao Hua, they immediately locked onto him. There really are people who aren't afraid of death. Xiao Hua also used his perception to sweep the area. He immediately understood that these two were also 11th layer aura refining cultivators. Surrounding the two of them were several dozen 9th and 10th layer aura refining cultivators. Although Xiao Hua's divine sense couldn't see the people clearly, it was very easy for him to see through everyone's cultivation levels. These two clearly came prepared. As soon as their divine senses locked onto Xiao Hua, they each took out two different yellow talismans. They spat out a mouthful of blood essence and stuck the talismans on their bodies. A rather strange fluctuation emerged from their blood vessels and stimulated their meridians. As a result, their transcendence energy suddenly increased by more than 30% compared to before. Strange, as Xiao Hua sensed, he suddenly remembered that he was still thinking about the secrets of the cultivation families. He couldn't help but feel that something was wrong. He wasn't afraid of 11th layer Qi refining cultivators, but the problem was that these were two 11th layer Qi refining cultivators. Moreover, they both had secret magic tools. Look, one was shaped like an alms bowl, the other was shaped like a small pagoda. Under the urging of the two's transcendence energy, they emitted different scattered lights and flew towards Xiao Hua following their divine senses. Moreover, the dozens of 9th and 10th layer Qi refining cultivators surrounding these two cultivators were like hungry wolves who saw a little sheep. All kinds of yellow talismans were raised in their hands and urged the flight talismans to fly over like a swarm of bees. Xiao Hua wasn't willing to fight against these people. Isn't it just 20 or so number plates? This young master wants you to watch, so you won't be able to eat them. Xiao Hua coldly snorted. He formed a hand seal, and his figure drilled into the ground. In front of 4 foundation establishment cultivators, Xiao Hua could easily escape. Now, facing 11th layer Qi refining cultivators, Xiao Hua simply didn't have any burden. Fellow Taoist Yuan, this guy has an earth escape talisman. A delicate, baby-faced cultivator with delicate features formed a hand seal to activate the small alms bowl and shouted with some astonishment. Fellow Taoist men, eyes incompetent, I'll go first. The other square-faced cultivator with a somewhat dull appearance activated the small pagoda. He slapped his hand and took out an earth escape talisman from his storage pouch and said, I just so happen to have a few earth escape talismans. Fellow Taoist Yuan, please wait. Fellow Taoist men frowned and said, for what the other fellow Taoist just said, this guy has some divine abilities. Jiang Mingxiao and Wang Qiming of Guangxian were eliminated by this guy. If we didn't join forces, I'm afraid we'd have to be very careful. This fellow Taoist Yuan slightly hesitated. He slapped his hand and took out another earth escape talisman and threw it to fellow Taoist men, saying, Fellow Taoist men, I'll give you an earth escape talisman. This is Xiao Hua's number plate. No need. Fellow Taoist Yuan waved his hand, and the earth escape talisman flew back to fellow Taoist men. Fellow Taoist Yuan turned his head and said, if any fellow Taoist has extra earth escape talismans, I'll give you the first number plate. I have one. Just as fellow Taoist Yuan finished speaking, a cultivator took out several earth escape talismans from his storage pouch and handed them over. This cultivator was the one who followed Jiang Mingxiao from the Chonglian village. Good, fellow Taoist fan. If I gets the number plate, your two won't be able to escape. Fellow Taoist Yuan was overjoyed and reached out to catch it. He slapped his hand and pointed with his finger. The alms bowl flashed and fell into fellow Taoist Yuan's hand. He looked at fellow Taoist men and smiled. Shall we go down now? Please. Fellow Taoist men also put away the small pagoda. The two of them flashed and chased down from different directions. Fellow Taoist fans still had some earth escape talismans and loudly asked, what should we do? Fellow Taoist Yuan said, if you want to come, then come. Whoever contributed the most would get the most. There are more than 20 number plates. Fellow Taoist Min smiled brightly and had already entered the earth. However, fellow Taoist Fan and the other cultivators looked at each other. None of them dared to rashly fly down. After all, there weren't many cultivators with Earth escape talismans, not even 40% of them. They wouldn't be willing to team up and chase down a cultivator who could kill an 11th layer chi condensation cultivator, even if they had 10 times the courage. Fellow Taoist Fan hesitated for a moment, then said in a low voice, "We will just wait here. If fellow Taoist Yuan and fellow Taoist Min succeed, then we'll get some benefits. If not, then we'll think of something else." Another way. Everyone's hearts trembled when they heard this. They looked around and quickly flew to a place where there was no one around. What else could they do? In order to protect themselves, they first sought the protection of an 11th layer chi condensation cultivator. Then, with the help of the 11th layer chi condensation cultivator's divine sense, they hunted down stray cultivators. Although they killed a lot of them, in the end there was still a limit. They had gathered all the number plates of the 11th layer chi condensation cultivators, but they still didn't have enough. In the end, there were no more cultivators to kill, so they could only kill each other. For example, if fellow Taoist Fan hadn't revealed Xiao Hua's information, his number plate would have been snatched away by someone else long ago. Everyone was on guard, yellow talismans in hand. Not only were they looking at each other, but they were also staring at the ground, ready to be summoned by the two 11th layer chi condensation cultivators at any time. At this moment, the air was still clear and the horizon was faintly white. This was the sign of dawn. If nothing unexpected happened, after a meal, the light of dawn would appear and the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciple selection would come to an end. Seeing the anxiety in everyone's hearts, a few of the more quick-witted ones had other ideas. But at this moment, from the ground beneath everyone's feet, a jet-black brilliance suddenly shot out. With lightning speed, it stabbed into fellow Taoist Fan's feet. Fellow Taoist Fan didn't even have time to react. The iron cloak talisman and other defensive yellow talismans on his body were pierced. As the faint brilliance flickered, fellow Taoist Fan only had time to put on a look of astonishment. His entire body began to sway and gradually disappeared. Bang! At the same time fellow Taoist Fan disappeared, a number plate appeared in midair. The fat cultivator closest to fellow Taoist Fan already had some yellow talismans in his hand. When he saw the number plate appear, he grinned and threw the yellow talismans in his hand, forcing the surrounding cultivators to retreat. He flew a few steps forward and reached out to grab the number plate. But just as his hand touched the number plate, a cold voice sounded in his ear. "You dare to take this young master's things?" Chapter 1529. This voice was very unfamiliar, but in the fat cultivator's ears, it was no less than a clap of thunder. "Senior, please spare my life." The fat cultivator hastily withdrew his hand, but it was already too late. The jet-black brilliance that had just killed fellow Taoist Fan had returned. In the blink of an eye, it had pierced between the fat cultivator's eyebrows. The fat cultivator naturally wouldn't allow himself to be captured without putting up a fight. He flung out a yellow talisman in his hand, and an ice net talisman appeared in front of him. Gotcha! The ice net talisman didn't seem to be able to block the sharp black iron needle in the slightest. The fat cultivator only felt his vision darken, and he was transported back to the Thunderclap Peak. Damn it, this guy, who is he? So powerful, so fast. When his figure landed on the Thunderclap Peak, the fat cultivator still hadn't seen who had eliminated him. Within the illusory formation, Xiao Hua waved his hand, and the two number plates fell into his storage pouch. At the same time, two flustered and exasperated voices came from the ground beneath his feet. "Xiao Hua, if you have the ability, don't run." "Don't run? You think this young master is a fool?" The corners of Xiao Hua's mouth revealed a trace of a sneer. His figure suddenly flew up, and with a wave of his hand, the black iron needle appeared in the air again, killing a 7th-level chi refining cultivator. After taking a number plate, it flew in a certain direction. Behind Xiao Hua were several tens of cultivators who were in a mess. At this moment, these cultivators couldn't help but make a move. Each of them took out their most convenient yellow talismans and methods. There were even a few people who took out their ancestral magic tools. They wanted to fight to the death when the sun rose from the east and see if they could gather enough number plates. When fellow Taoist Yuan and fellow Taoist Min flashed out from the ground, they saw the chaotic scene. They wanted to berate them, but they tacitly kept their mouths shut. This was their final method to deal with the problem. Although they arrived a bit earlier, they still arrived. Fellow Taoist Yuan, should we still chase? Fellow Taoist Min glanced at the distant Xiao Hua's figure, which wasn't very fast, and whispered, "Still chase? My brain isn't sick." Fellow Taoist Yuan's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise, and he said, "This Xiao Hua already has enough number plates. He was still able to escape under the joint efforts of the two of us. He is definitely a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Since we're going to cultivate in the same sect in the future, how can we not form good karma? If we force them into a corner and force them to use whatever means they have, we will end up in a lose-lose situation." Then, he looked at the chaos beneath his feet. "Isn't this the best time to solve our problem?" Fellow Taoist Min clapped his hands and said, "Great, I have the same idea." Then the two of them stood with their hands clasped behind their backs and quietly watched the fight in the field. But the distant Xiao Hua was at a loss. He used his perception to sweep over and over again, cursing in his heart, "Motherfuckers, why don't you chase after me? I'm still waiting to teach you a lesson." As he said this, he waved his hand, and the black iron needle flashed out from the rock behind him, flying into Xiao Hua's hand at an extremely fast speed. Since the two 11th layer Qi refining cultivators didn't want to trouble Xiao Hua, and Xiao Hua himself didn't have any desire to win, the two of them joining forces could still put up a fight against Xiao Hua. If Xiao Hua didn't reveal his trump card, he would only be able to fight to a draw. There is no need to haggle over this any further. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua released his perception. His figure leisurely floated up, and he flew in a certain direction. At this moment, the sky was about to brighten. All the cultivators knew this was their last chance. Almost all the temporary small groups were in conflict. Of the 15 11th layer Qi refining cultivators, 2 had been eliminated by Xiao Hua, so there were still 13 left. These cultivators had already obtained a number plate that allowed them to pass the test. Some of them even seized a lot of number plates in order to gain the favor of the masters of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Of course, these cultivators had some close friends with them, and for the sake of their future cultivation in the Imperial Thunder Sect, they also gave some number plates to these people. Xiao Hua's day's search naturally attracted the attention of many cultivators. Among these cultivators, the majority of them already knew something from Xiao Hua's leisurely appearance. Looking at his peak 10th layer Qi refining cultivation, they didn't dare to harass him. As soon as they saw Xiao Hua, they immediately ran far away, afraid that Xiao Hua would snatch away their number plates. Of course, there was still a small group of cultivators who had no other choice, or perhaps there was something wrong with their heads. Even though they knew they were no match for Xiao Hua, they still teamed up to attack Xiao Hua. This was because they also understood that Xiao Hua and the others definitely had 10 similar number plates in their storage pouches. As long as they had a chance, someone would immediately obtain a rare opportunity. Therefore, even though Xiao Hua didn't want to make a move, he still added another 13 number plates. When Xiao Hua flew to the top of a steep mountain, a bright red sun slowly rose from the east, illuminating the entire illusory realm with a dazzling light. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The mountains shook and the earth quaked. Countless mountain ranges began to sink, and countless forests gushed out from the ground. Following the changes in the illusory realm, many cultivators who used Earth escape talismans were pushed out from the ground by the formation. "It's her. Hurry. Just a moment ago, when I killed a cultivator, 7 or 8 number plates fell from that person's body. This cultivator took advantage of eyes and attention and scuttled out from the ground, taking away all of those number plates." A coarse voice shouted, "Now I still lack 3 number plates. Fellow Taoist, help I kill this cultivator, and I will give the other 5 number plates to him. Hee hee, this cultivator is actually interesting. Xiao Hua's mouth held a smile, and he inwardly said, why is it similar to this young master's previous behavior? As long as I get a good deal, I'll immediately run far away. This cultivator who had his number plate stolen. I'm afraid he doesn't have an Earth Escape talisman, right? While thinking, Xiao Hua inadvertently swept his perception over, but when he sensed Shue's very familiar magic power fluctuations, his heart immediately jumped. Without the slightest hesitation, he released the black iron needle. In the distance, Shue was also in a critical situation. Her cultivation was just at the 7th level of qi refining, far from enough in this illusory realm. Fortunately, she had an Earth Escape talisman on her, so she could hide underground. Of course, the most important thing was that she was born in a cultivation family. Misty Mountain naturally had a few ancestral magic tools for her to use. One was a magic tool that could conceal magic power, and the other was a bewildering cloak which could protect her completely. Of course, if it was only like this, she was afraid she would only be able to see Xiao Hua after sunrise. If Xiao Hua had more number plates, he might be able to give them to her, but most likely that was impossible. Therefore, Shue also had her own plans. She relied on her magic tool to walk under the feet of others, always paying attention to the movements on the ground. Just now, when Xiao Hua heard that cultivator with the loud voice, he also deserved it. This guy also exhausted his mental and physical strength to use a magic tool to kill a cultivator whose cultivation was about the same as his own. Moreover, 8 number plates fell from that cultivator's body, which really made him overjoyed. In the end, this guy was in a daze, giving Shue, who had been coveting their fight underground for a long time, an opportunity. She was just a bit faster than that cultivator with a loud voice. Shue took the 8 number plates in her pouch, and in addition, in order to escape, she suffered a blow from the other party's magic tool, seriously injuring her body. In the future, she could only barely maintain her strength and hide underground. If she wanted to wait until sunrise, she would have the opportunity to strive for the top 100 with the 9 number plates. However, things didn't go as she wished. In the end, this illusory formation still had to move mountains and overturn seas to restore it to its original state. Shue's magic power was already insufficient, so she was even more unable to resist the repelling force underground. Like the others, she was sent out of the ground. Of course, a cultivator with magic power like her basically didn't exist in this illusory formation. Even if she only had 1 number plate, she would still be killed by others. Moreover, she just so happened to run into an enemy. She saw that cultivator with the loud voice activate his magic tool, and a round, large copper hammer-like magic tool struck down from the sky. Before it could even get close to Tin Zhong, the whistling sound of the wind enveloped Shue. At the side, several other cultivators around the 9th layer of qi refining also had smiles on their faces. Each of them used their divine abilities, sending yellow talismans and magic tools to greet Shue's body. They didn't have any intention of showing mercy to a woman. Alas, yesterday's fun, today's sad memories. This place is still here. People are not the people of yesterday. Thank for the memory. The wrong poem. I wish him good luck. Shue saw the vicious methods of the crowd, and her heart felt a burst of sadness. She was too lazy to summon the magic tool in her hand, and silently recited a few lines of the poem. Her body stopped in the air, and her eyes looked towards the horizon where the sun was rising from the east. Her face was indifferent. Just as Shue was about to give up, a despairing howl echoed out. Under the golden rays of the sun, a lightning-like black ray mysteriously flashed through the eyes of the loud voice. Following the disappearance of the loud voice, the bronze hammer that was less than a meter away from Shue's forehead slowly disappeared. Moreover, the loud voice didn't lie. From the place where he disappeared, there really were 7 number plates that fell out. At this moment, the eyes of the cultivators that attacked Shue emitted a green light. The magic tools and yellow talismans that were attacking Shue naturally wouldn't be retracted, and the cultivators themselves flew towards those number plates. A voice that Shue was familiar with descended from the sky. Immediately after, a sentence that Shue had never heard before, but from now on, she was afraid that she would frequently hear it resounded throughout the entire place. These are this young master's things. I want to see who dares to touch them. Xiaohua. Shue groaned in her heart and slightly turned her head. Looking at Xiaohua, who was flying towards her from the horizon, she made a very strange movement. Shue. She actually didn't care about the magic tools that were attacking her, and instead raised her hand and very attentively combed the messy hair in front of her forehead. There's no mistake, right? Seeing this, Xiaohua couldn't help but stare blankly. He killed that cultivator with a loud voice, of course, because he wanted to let Shue block some of the remaining magic tools and yellow talismans. Who would have thought that the other party's big sister would actually a woman doll herself up for her lover? How could Xiaohua not vomit blood? What kind of situation is this? You're actually still thinking about this. Xiaohua truly understood what a female cultivator was. Chapter 1530. Fortunately, Xiaohua's black iron needle had already flown to Shue's left side. Xiaohua tried his best to fly to Shue's side, while controlling the black iron needle to break the magic tools and yellow talismans one by one. It has to be said that this black iron needle is really powerful. Not only can it break the defensive yellow talismans on a cultivator's body, it is also not at a disadvantage against other people's magic tools. The only thing that makes Xiaohua unhappy is that this black iron needle is still too light. When it fights against magic tools, it seems light as a feather. Seeing Xiaohua descend like a god, Shue revealed a smile. Xiaohua, you came? Hee, if you were half a step late, I'm afraid you wouldn't be able to see me. As she spoke, her body slightly swayed and her eyes slightly closed, as if she was about to fall from the sky. Xiaohua didn't dare to be careless. He quickly flew up and grabbed Shue's arm. Shue leaned on Xiaohua's shoulder. Xiaohua was a bit uncomfortable. He slightly used his arm and only gave it to Shue. Shue nestled next to Xiaohua's arm. She seemed to be seriously injured, but her slightly opened eyes flashed with joy that others didn't know. Xiaohua grabbed Shue's arm with one hand and patted with the other hand. Dozens of top-quality fireball talismans were taken out and shot out like a fairy scattering flowers. He already had experience controlling black iron needles, so controlling these fireball talismans was simply a piece of cake. At this time, those cultivators also put those number plates into their storage pouches. They hurriedly took out fireball talismans, icicle talismans, and other yellow talismans from their storage pouches. There were even other high-level yellow talismans and magic tools to fight against the exploding fireballs that filled the air. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Loud sounds came one after another, blasting these cultivators into dust. They were not stingy with these fireball talismans. Those fireball talismans couldn't hurt them, but they were still in a difficult situation, right? Of course, the most important thing was that within these fireball talismans, Xiaohua's black iron needles began to display their might again. These cultivators were all in the 9th and 10th layer of the Qi refining realm. They were far from having divine sense, so the speed of the black iron needles was absolutely not something they could perceive. Following the explosion of the fireball talismans and Xiaohua's use of this chaos, miserable screams and disbelief were transmitted from the chaos. The magic tools and yellow talismans attacking Xiaohua and Shue also gradually disappeared. After the power of the fireball talisman passed, there were still traces of heat waves in the air. Only 22 number plates were left scattered in the air. At this moment, an 11th level Qi refining cultivator slowly appeared in front of Xiaohua. It was a handsome young man. He wasn't very tall, but his face was somewhat arrogant. He wore a rarely seen white Taoist robe. Invisibility talisman. Xiaohua's eyes slightly narrowed. He seemed to know that those cultivators from earlier should have been recruited by this 11th level qi condensation cultivator. Xiaohua's figure did not move. The black iron needle also stopped above the number plate. He coldly looked at the white-clothed cultivator. The white-clothed cultivator also looked at Xiaohua. At the same time, his divine sense swept over and locked onto the black iron needle. It seemed to be a type of compromise, and also seemed to have seen the power of the black iron needle. The white-clothed cultivator's eyes flashed. His entire figure once again concealed itself in the air, but it was unknown where he went. Once the white-clothed cultivator left, Xiaohua released his perception. He looked again and again, but he still didn't find any clues. Granny, this young master was truly a bit careless. Just now, when I killed a few 11th level qi refining cultivators, I already felt invincible. If this guy used an invisibility talisman and rashly attacked me, it's really hard to say what the result would be. Xiaohua was somewhat afraid. He waved his hand, and the 22 number plates flew into his hand. Shue shue. Xiaohua used his arm to nudge shue shue. He called out, "The third trial is about to end. Why haven't you taken the number plates yet?" Sure enough, shue shue struggled to straighten her body. She waved her hand, and 3 number plates flew into her hand. She weakly said, "I only need 3. He nodded. Those 19 number plates were also put into his storage pouch. Swoosh, just as Xiaohua put away the number plates, 2 multicolored lights flashed in the air, enveloping Xiaohua and Shue Shue. After a while, the scenery changed. When everything stopped, Xiaohua and Shue Shue once again appeared in the open space of Seeking Thunder Valley. The thunderboat that previously sent everyone here had already stopped in midair above the open space. Fellow Taoists, this time, the disciple selection of my Imperial Thunder Sect has officially ended. Everyone, please properly keep the number plates you received. Do not take them out by any means. Otherwise, you will be immediately expelled. Although the voice was slightly immature, it was very strict. The people who had just been transported out didn't dare to do anything. As for the people who had been eliminated before, Xiaohua looked at the open space and didn't see any traces of them. Presumably, the Imperial Thunder Sect had already made arrangements. Fellow Taoists, please board the Thunderboat. After 15 minutes, the restriction here will take effect. If any fellow Taoists still want to train in Seeking Thunder Valley, then properly stay here. The voice unexpectedly relaxed and said a witty sentence. Naturally, after this voice finished shouting, all the cultivators on the open space, regardless of whether their faces were indifferent, tranquil, excited, vexed, regretful, perturbed, or other kinds of emotions, urged their magic power and flew onto the thunderboat one after another. Shue Shue was even more so. Her body leaned against Xiaohua, her arm tightly attached to Xiaohua's arm. She simply didn't use a trace of magic power. Looking at her moist big eyes, it was clearly a kind of innocence. It seemed to be saying, "Heavily injured, powerless, please." Xiaohua shrugged. He felt a burst of panic for no reason. Although Shue Shue was voluptuous, her weight was still a lot worse than the tip of the devil's spear. Xiaohua urged his magic power. His figure very leisurely landed on the thunderboat. Beside him, that white-clothed cultivator also landed. Seeing Xiaohua, and then looking at Shue Shue beside Xiaohua, that white-clothed cultivator cupped his hands and said with a smile, "I am Jitsong King Yin Xiao. Congratulations to Junior Brother for entering the Imperial Thunder Sect. In the future, we will all be fellow disciples of the same sect. Junior Brother, please take care of us in the future." Afterwards, without waiting for Xiaohua to speak, he looked left and right and said in a low voice, "Junior sister, if your injuries aren't heavy, stand up for the time being. Otherwise, if by any chance you're disliked by some master, a punishment for no reason is not worth it." Shue Shue's face slightly reddened. She hurriedly straightened up and left Xiaohua's arm. Xiaohua let out a sigh of relief. He felt that fighting against an 11th level qi refinement cultivator was more exhausting. He also cupped his hands and said, I am Xiao Hua. Greetings to Senior Brother Wang. Disciple is a loose cultivator. My knowledge is shallow. Loose cultivator? Wang Yunxiao's face was extremely moved. He looked Xiao Hua up and down and said with a sigh, Junior Brother Xiao is a talent with outstanding aptitude. When you entered, you were buried among loose cultivators. If it wasn't for the fact that the Imperial Thunder Sect didn't stick to one pattern in selecting disciples this time, Junior Brother Xiao, I'm afraid you would be a pearl cast into darkness for a lifetime. Hearing Wang Yunxiao's words, Xiao Hua's heart was moved. He asked curiously, when other sects recruit disciples, as long as they are above the 10th level of Qi refinement, could it be that there is something special about the Imperial Thunder Sect? A strange expression appeared on Wang Yunxiao's face. Just as he was about to speak, he heard a voice call out, Fellow Taoists, you can rest in your places and take medicinal pills. We'll bring you all to Zhen Lei Palace now. Zhen Lei Palace. Wang Yunxiao's face showed joy. He looked at Xiao Hua and cupped his hands. Without saying anything, he sat down and began to meditate. Shui was already injured in the illusion. Naturally, she took medicinal pills and guided the medicinal power to nourish her meridians. Seeing that everyone was sitting cross-legged, Xiao Hua had no choice but to sit down and silently use his cultivation method. Not long after, a huge mountain peak appeared in front of them. On the mountain peak, there were many palaces and countless pavilions. Many immortal birds and immortal beasts leisurely strolled in the forest. In the forest, there were many exotic flowers and plants that bloomed. The thunderboat gradually slowed down and landed in front of a majestic palace. In the palace's square, there were many young cultivators. Some of them were in the 7th level of Qi refinement, while others were in the 90th level of Qi refinement. They were all standing solemnly. Opposite these young cultivators were even more children. Their cultivation levels range from the 1st level to the 6th level. These children were standing in a neat formation, but how could they stand still? Some were playing, some were sitting, and many were even playing with yellow talismans. Of course, the thunderboat's landing attracted everyone's attention. Many young children were running after the thunderboat. Some of them even wanted to use their flying talismans to fly into the air. Cough, cough. There was a low cough, and a slightly old voice said, Disciples on duty, why aren't you hurrying to maintain order? Although it's a rare happy day for our Imperial Thunder Sect, we must remember the sect's rules. Immediately, dozens of young cultivators flew up and stopped these children. Although these children were naturally playful, they still had rules. When they saw their senior brothers fly up, they all obediently returned to their positions. They all stood with their hands behind their backs and pretended to be serious. Xiao Hua and the others stood on the thunderboat. Seeing the lively scene in front of them, a warm feeling rose in their hearts. Especially Xiao Hua. It was as if he saw the scene in Yellow Flower Ridge a few years ago. Instantly, his nose turned sour and his eyes filled with tears. The thunderboat landed. A tall and thin cultivator flew up to the thunderboat and scanned it with his divine sense. He smiled and said, I am Zhen Ai, the deacon of Zhen Lei Palace. In the future, I will be the martial uncle of 100 of you. Today, I will be in charge of the disciples entering the sect. Greetings, Martial Uncle Zhen. A few clever disciples began to bow and greet him. Hee, it's too early to call me that. Zhen waved his hand and said, All of you, get off the thunderboat and follow the disciples to the side hall of Zhen Lei Palace to register your number plates. At the same time, you can also test your bone age. Yes, we will follow Martial Uncle Zhen's orders. A few 11th level Qi refining cultivators bowed and jumped off the thunderboat. Of course, a few disciples below led them to Zhen Lei Palace. Shui. Xiao Hua and Shui jumped off the lightning boat. Just as Xiao Hua was about to ask, a few young girls from the Lightning Conversion Palace ran over and giggled. Fellow Taoist, the female cultivator is go to the other side hall. She definitely can't be together with these stinky men. Chapter 1531. Stinky man? Xiao Hua's eyes widened as he looked at these girls in disbelief. He didn't know what to say. Hurry up and leave. One of the girls disdainfully glared at Xiao Hua, then pulled Shue's hand and said, Sister, let's wait for the other sisters here. I'll listen to Junior sister's instructions. Shui was the sweetest. She immediately smiled and gave Xiao Hua a look. Okay, Xiao Hua was defeated by this girl in his heart. He nodded and chased after Wang Yunxiao. He asked in a low voice, Senior Brother Wang, what's the bone age test for? Knowing that Xiao Hua was a loose cultivator, Wang Yunxiao was not surprised. He smiled and said, the bone age test is to see how old fellow Taoist is. Oh, Xiao Hua was somewhat enlightened. I'm a cultivator in the cultivation world, but it's not easy to tell my age from my appearance. Take me, for example. When I was young, I ate some strange herbs, which helped me retain my youthful appearance. I look like I'm in my 20s, but in fact, I'm already 32 years old. Therefore, when a cultivation sect recruits disciples, the disciples who pass the selection must have their bone age tested to find out their true age. If they are too old, even if their cultivation meets the requirements, they still can't be selected. Junior Brother Xiao, think about it. If it's a 60-year-old cultivator at the late stage of qi refining, would the Imperial Thunder sect accept them? So it's like this. Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. He was slightly uneasy. Look at Junior Brother Zhao's young appearance. On the surface, you look like you're only 17 or 18 years old. How can you cultivate to the 10th level of qi refining at this age? Fellow Taoist Xiao should have the same opportunity as me, right? Wang Yunxiao smiled thoughtfully. Xiao Hua only smiled and didn't say anything. Wang Yunxiao also didn't ask. The bone age test was about to begin, so Xiao Hua's age wouldn't be a secret. Oh, that's right. Junior Brother Xiao, the Imperial Thunder sect, seems to have a rule. Wang Yunxiao suddenly said. It said that only cultivators above 35 years old will be accepted into the sect, unless they are foundation building. What? Xiao Hua stared blankly. He almost stood still and said in a low voice, Why is there such a strange condition? Wang Yunxiao's eyes flashed with understanding. He smiled and said, Good for you to know, Junior Brother Xiao. In a normal cultivation sect, a disciple of the 12th layer should be around 38 years old. Even so, only 60% of these disciples can reach the late stage of the 12th layer, and only 30% can reach the foundation establishment stage. So low, Xiao Hua exclaimed in a low voice. He felt that the disciples of cultivation sects seemed to be able to cultivate to the foundation establishment stage. Fellow Taoist Xiao. If every disciple in a cultivation sect is able to reach foundation establishment, then wouldn't our Dawn Rain continent be filled with foundation establishment cultivators? Can it still be as rare as it is now? Wang Yunxiao said with a smile. It's precisely because foundation establishment is so difficult that those disciples over the age of 40, even if they cultivate to the late stage of the 12th layer of qi refining, that could basically have no chance of breaking through to foundation establishment. Think about it. If a 35-year-old cultivator enters a cultivation sect, what kind of benefits can he bring to the cultivation sect? Xiao Hua suddenly understood. That's right. Even if a 35-year-old middle-stage qi refining cultivator enters the Imperial Thunder sect, he would only have 5 years to break through to foundation establishment. And from a middle stage of the 11th layer to the peak of the 12th layer, even a disciple who has been nurtured since childhood would need 5 to 10 years. How can a disciple who just entered the sect successfully enter foundation establishment? Since he can't enter foundation establishment, why would they still want this kind of disciple? Damn it, just how old is this young master? Xiao Hua's heart began to beat faster. Seeing Xiao Hua's expression change again, Wang Yunxiao didn't say anything else and slowly walked into the side hall of Zhenlei Palace. Although the side hall of Zhenlei Palace was called a side hall, in reality, it was equally majestic. The carved beams and painted pillars were incomparably exquisite. Countless talismans faintly flashed on the pillars, beams, doors, and windows. The various colors of light were very harmonious. It was unknown where the light came from, but it illuminated the entire side hall. Xiaohua followed Wang Yunxiao into the side chamber. At this time, the entire side chamber had more than 10 dark green tables arranged in an orderly manner on both sides of the side chamber. Behind each table, there was a late-stage foundation establishment realm old man sitting cross-legged. When Xiaohua entered, there was a cultivator in front of each table. These cultivators were sitting cross-legged in front of the tables. Those foundation establishment old men looked at them with their eyes, swept them with their divine sense, and even walked up to them and used their hands to pinch them. Then, with a wave of their hand, a different colored light flashed. Some things were recorded in the jade slips in their hands. Finally, they waved their hands and let the cultivators who were tested leave from the other side of the side hall. Not long after, it was Xiaohua's turn. Xiaohua very nervously walked in front of an old man with white hair and a youthful complexion. He bowed and saluted. "Junior Xiaohua greets Senior, and sit down first." That old man looked up and said indifferently, "You don't need to panic. Even if you've eaten strange herbs and your age is a bit old, that's your fate. Even if you can't cultivate, there's still the riches and honor of the mortal world. Go and pursue them on your own." "Yes, Junior understands." Xiaohua respectfully sat in front of the table. Just like before, the old man carefully looked at Xiaohua from head to toe. His eyes revealed a trace of surprise. Then, an abundant divine sense locked onto Xiaohua and enveloped him from head to toe. Xiaohua's heart moved. He also released his perception. Sure enough, that old man didn't notice. The old man's divine sense released a trace of strange fluctuation. It was through Xiaohua's bones. It should be the Imperial Thunder Sect's so-called bone testing technique. Io. That old man looked at Xiaohua's bones from head to toe several times. He couldn't help but cry out, "Strange, there's something wrong with your bone age." Xiaohua's head began to sweat. He felt his perception withdraw and asked nervously, "Junior, how old is Junior? And you seem to be several hundred years old, or perhaps 1,000 years old, but you also seem to be 4, 5, or 18 years old." The foundation establishment old man said very casually, but as soon as he said it, he realized something and berated, "You don't know how old you are? You actually have to ask this old man." Junior is 23 years old this year." "Of course I know." Xiaohua's heart moved and he laughed. Do I need you to tell me?" That foundation establishment old man stood up, stretched out his hand, and touched all the bones in Xiaohua's body. He touched no less than, in the time it took to drink a cup of tea, almost all the bones in Xiaohua's body were touched. This time, he withdrew his hand in satisfaction. He glared at Xiaohua and scolded jokingly, "You actually dare to make fun of this old man. When there's time in the future, this old man will take care of you, brat." Xiaohua turned pale with fright. He asked urgently, "Junior, how old is Junior?" At this time, in the distance, Wang Yunxiao had already finished measuring his bone age. Looking at Xiaohua, who came in at almost the same time as him, his eyes were even more contemptuous. "How old are you? You should know." The foundation establishment old man swiped his hand, and a fine light flashed. Everything related to Xiaohua was recorded in a jade slip. "Go," the old man said coldly, then looked at the next cultivator. His grandmother. Xiaohua cursed in his heart. "I'm afraid I can't pass this test. It seems that before I'm driven out of Mount Lamau, I should find an opportunity to take out that pearl and see if I can plead for leniency." Xiaohua thought as he walked out of this side chamber. At this time, outside the side chamber, there was a long line. At the end of the line was also a side chamber. Xiaohua was somewhat dejected. Drooping his head, he silently followed the crowd. Although the line was very long, it was also very fast. Before long, it was Xiaohua's turn. Xiaohua walked in. Inside, there were 4 12th-layer qi refining cultivators and 1 early-stage foundation establishment cultivator. They stood in the center of the side chamber, respectively. Behind them were 3 large doors. The figure of the cultivator in front of Xiao Hua disappeared into the middle door. Xiao Hua weakly walked in front of the 5 cultivators and bowed in greeting. Junior Xiao Hua greets seniors. Those cultivators saw Xiao Hua's expression and understood. They smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist, don't be discouraged. Although you can't enter my Imperial Thunder Sect, there are other sects that you can join. Fellow Taoist, Zhao's 10th layer Qi, refining cultivation, is also extremely welcomed by some sects. Many thanks for seniors' consolation." Xiao Hua was somewhat spirited in advance and walked towards the middle door. Fellow Taoist Xiao is going the wrong way. The middle door is for those cultivators whose number of tokens isn't confirmed to be within the top 100. You should go to the left door. Outside that door is the Thunderboat. It can directly send fellow Taoist to Thunderclap Peak. A cultivator very politely reminded. "Oh, okay." Xiao Hua casually agreed. He turned around and walked towards the left door. But just as he took 2 steps, he came to his senses and said anxiously, "What? The left door leads to Thunderclap Peak?" "Yes." That cultivator smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, there are already more than 10 10th layer and 9th layer Qi refining fellow Taoists in front of you. Fellow Taoist Xiao doesn't need to feel ashamed." "Damn it," Xiao Hua said inwardly. He quickly walked back and pointed with his finger. "The right door. Is it for those who can confirm to pass the 3rd trial?" "Of course." Another cultivator saw through the clues and asked curiously, "Could it be that fellow Taoist Xiao has 12 tokens?" "Of course." Xiao Hua finally felt proud and elated. He clapped his hands, and with a crash sound, a pile of tokens was thrown to the ground by this guy. He pointed with his finger and said very innocently, "Junior has 61 tokens. I don't know if I passed the trial or not." "What? 61 tokens?" Not only were the 4 12th layer Qi refining cultivators flabbergasted, even the early stage foundation building cultivator was moved. That cultivator scanned with his divine sense and knew the number of tokens. His eyes flashed again and again. He glanced at Xiao Hua a few times and said to the disciple next to him in a low voice, "Why aren't you quickly collecting them? These 61 number plates are genuine." Chapter 1532. TSK Tisk. One of the 4 cultivators smacked his lips and waved his hand. The pile of number plates on the ground was collected into his storage pouch. He said, "That 10th layer aura refining cultivator just now was so proud of himself after getting 8 number plates. He directly called me Senior Marshal Brother. Senior Marshal Brother. This person is also at the 10th layer. He actually got so many number plates. I wonder how many cultivators died in his hands in the illusion formation. Then, can Junior go through the door on the left?" Xiao Hua asked weakly. "Go. If you still can't go, then I'm afraid none of the cultivators participating in the 3rd trial will be able to go." The Foundation Establishment cultivator waved his hand. A fine light flashed, and Xiao Hua's name and other information were written into the jade slip in his hand. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and leisurely walked through the door on the left. Outside the door was a corridor. In the corridor, there were several 5th and 6th layer aura refining children. When they saw Xiao Hua walk in, they all beamed with joy and raised their hands. "Senior Marshal Brother. This way." "Hee. Thank you, Junior Marshal Brother." Xiao Hua's heart was somewhat relaxed. He smiled and returned the greeting, then followed the children through the long gallery. There were many pictures in this gallery. Some were of demonic beasts, some were of cultivators, and some were of exotic flowers and plants. There were even scenes of fighting flickering with lightning. Xiao Hua looked left and right while entering the palace door at the end of the gallery. The palace gate was extremely tall and wide. After passing through the gate, there was an incomparably huge palace. At the top of the palace was a platform that was a few feet tall. It was suspended in midair. The platform was very large, about 30% of the entire palace. In front of the platform was a flat ground. At this moment, there were already some cultivators standing on the flat ground. The men stood on the right and the women on the left. Xue Xue was eagerly waiting. When she saw Xiao Hua's face full of surprise, she waved her white hand in front of her chest. Xiao Hua nodded slightly, then looked at the male cultivators. Sure enough, Wang Yinxiao was already standing there. Fellow Taoist Yuan and fellow Taoist men also appeared as expected. Seeing Xiao Hua come over, the two looked at each other and cupped their hands. Fellow Taoist Xiao really passed. We don't know each other until we fight. In the future, we'll be fellow senior martial brothers. Let's be more intimate. Wang Yinxiao saw fellow Taoist Min and fellow Taoist Yuan talking together and was slightly surprised. I, Xiao Hua, formally greet you two fellow Taoists. Xiao Hua smiled and cupped his hands. Now he was somewhat confused. Did he really pass? If his age didn't pass, then shouldn't the Foundation establishment old man have let him in? But if his age was acceptable, why would the old man say that there was a problem with his bone age? Would he say that she was lying to him again? I Huan Yuanbo greets fellow Taoist Xiao. I'm Gold City's Min Ge. Greetings to fellow Xiao. The two of them respectively saluted. Xiao Hua was able to escape from their joint attack, so his strength was definitely not something they could underestimate. In the future, they would be cultivating in the same sect, so how could they not have the intention to befriend him? Xiao Hua knew that this was the communication method of the cultivation aristocratic families. Although he felt disdain in his heart, he didn't want to slap a smiling face, so he cupped his hands and returned the greeting. Seeing that Xiao Hua wasn't too affectionate towards them, Mingu and Yi Zichen knew that this guy still held a grudge against them for joining hands in the illusion formation. They didn't say anything else and retreated to the side, waiting for the results of the disciple selection to be announced. Closely following Xiao Hua into the main hall were several tens of people. Afterwards, no more cultivators entered. The boy who led Xiao Hua and the others enclosed the main hall's door. Xiao Hua released his perception and nodded slightly. He inwardly said, "There are a total of 64 people in this main hall. Among them, there are also some boys who were selected during the first trial of the Thunderclap Peak. These disciples in front of me are still 36 short of 100. I'm afraid that the remaining disciples will be selected from the cultivators in the middle gate." Sure enough, in the time it took to finish a meal, a deafening thunderclap resounded in the air above the palace, and it gave Xiao Hua fright. After that, a melodious and continuous string music resounded once more, and when it entered one's ears, it caused one to be fascinated. Along with the string music, a small gate appeared on the left side of the high platform. From that gate, another 30 or so cultivators filed out. These cultivators' faces carried excitement, rejoicing, and other complicated expressions. Following the boys who led the way in front, they stood on both sides of the high platform. Fellow Taoists, I should call you martial nephews. A voice resounded. The thin and tall middle-stage Foundation establishment cultivator, Jin Jin, appeared on the high platform. With a wave of his hand, the string music stopped abruptly. He said in a clear voice, "Congratulations on passing the disciple selection of my Imperial Thunder Sect. You are now my Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples." Hearing this, Xiao Hua felt as if a huge stone had been lifted from his heart. He let out a long sigh and bowed along with the others. He said, "Greetings to Martial Uncle General. Many thanks to Martial Uncle Jin for taking care of us." All of you rise." Jin Jin didn't hold back. He waved his hand and said, "My Imperial Thunder Sect's disciple selection has always been strict. In the past, there were only a dozen or so people who could stand in front of I in the Spring Thunder Hall. Today's scene of 94 people is truly a rare sight." 94 people? Xiao Hua was slightly dazed. Didn't they say they were recruiting 100 people? Immediately after, Xiao Hua came to a realization. I'm afraid there was more than one 100th disciple. In the end, they were all eliminated. Xiao Hua's thoughts weren't wrong. Generally, the disciples of cultivation sects would take 12 or 13 number plates and give the rest of the number plates to their subordinates. Fortunately, after entering the Imperial Thunder Sect, they would have a good relationship with others and form their own forces. This way, there wouldn't be many disciples in the 90th place and the 100th place, making it easy to distinguish. Who would have thought that Xiao Hua would suddenly obtain 62 number plates, which was 50 more? Naturally, the number of cultivators ranked 100 would increase by quite a bit. And it wasn't just a bit, it was a lot. As a result, the Imperial Thunder sect, which could have recruited 6 more disciples, could only eliminate all the cultivators below the 94th disciple rank. All right, this martial uncle won't say anything more. Although you're now my Imperial Thunder sect's disciples, your temperament, background, aptitude, and so on still have to be tested. In the first year, you can only be considered preparatory disciples. If any disciple joins my Imperial Thunder sect with an ulterior motive, not only will you not be able to become my Imperial Thunder sect's official disciple, but, you won't be able to see the path down the Thunderclap Peak again. And that's what I was thinking. How can you join just by passing 3 tests? So there's still a year's worth of tests. If there are spies from some sects, the Imperial Thunder sect will find some clues during this year. Xiao Hua suddenly realized. The following matters will be divided into 2 rounds. The first round will be the sect's foundation building cultivators choosing the disciples they like. If any disciple is chosen by your master, they can directly follow their master to the Jade Archive Hall to register, then follow their master back to their cave. In the second round, this martial uncle will announce the results of the selection of the remaining disciples for the senior brothers who didn't choose any disciples to refer to, so that they can find a suitable master for each disciple. As for the disciples who didn't find a master in the end, don't worry. My Jinlei Palace's Technique Imparting Hall has disciples who specialize in imparting techniques to teach you. You only need to cultivate diligently, and there will definitely be a day when you can make a name for yourself. What's going on? Xiao Hua was somewhat puzzled. How can I not find a master in the Imperial Thunder sect? If that's the case, how is it different from cultivating outside? Oh, right. The Imperial Thunder sect will provide cultivation techniques, medicinal pills, spirit stones, and so on. Alas, cultivation is really like the sand being washed away by the waves. It's really not easy. Just as Xiao Hua was smiling bitterly, the doors of the Spring Thunder Hall opened wide. Dozens, or even hundreds of foundation building cultivators in the late stage walked in wearing different Taoist robes with different expressions. Oh my God, I'm afraid there are hundreds of foundation building cultivators, right? Xiao Hua was dumbstruck. He had never seen so many foundation building cultivators before. Although these cultivators didn't release their pressure, that kind of aura and that kind of prestige still suppressed Xiao Hua and the others to the point that they couldn't breathe. That's right. After all, there were hundreds of almighty people who could pinch them to death at any time. Who wouldn't be careful? Greetings, seniors. The disciples felt the same as Xiao Hua. Apart from fear, they were also excited. All of them bowed in greeting. The group of foundation-building cultivators didn't even look at these disciples. They slowly walked up to the high platform and released their divine senses, sweeping over these disciples again and again. This divine sense. Xiao Hua quietly released his perception. He had already discovered that many of these divine senses were extremely similar to the divine senses he had sensed on the Thunderclap Peak that night. Sigh. Xiao Hua sighed. Sure enough, those divine senses didn't seem to care about Xiao Hua and just swept past him. Damn it, looks like this young master has to pass the second round, or even the third round. You guys, how can you have eyes but not recognize Jade? Xiao Hua almost wanted to stomp his feet. Jin Jin's voice sounded. Senior brothers, I'm sure you all already have a plan in mind. Right at this moment, the hall door that had just been closed after the foundation building cultivators entered open again. A cultivator's figure appeared at the entrance of the Spring Thunder Hall. Who is this? Xiao Hua lowered his head and sighed. He didn't anxiously look up at the high platform to watch and perform. Instead, he immediately noticed that there was someone there. However, when he saw that he couldn't see through that cultivator's cultivation level, he couldn't help but be stunned. Who is this? Everyone present also noticed and raised their heads to look. Everyone on the high platform tensed up. Jin Jin even hurriedly bowed in greeting. Martial Ant Sun Ming, disciple greets you. Martial Ant? Xiao Hua came to a realization. This cultivator's cultivation level is probably at the gold core stage. That cultivator entered the hall. It was actually a middle-aged female cultivator. She didn't wear a Taoist robe, but rather pretty clothes. Greetings, Martial Ant Sun Ming. When Sun Ming arrived on the high platform, over 100 foundation building cultivators all bowed in greeting. And you may dispense with the formalities. With a smile on his face, Sun Ming waved his hand and said, "You can continue with your work." This penniless Taoist was just passing by and knew that today is a grand occasion for my Imperial Thunder sect, so I came down to take a look. Chapter 1533. Yes, Martial Uncle Sun, please take a seat. Jin Jin waved his hand, and a jade chair appeared on the high platform in front of everyone. Sun Ming nodded and sat down. After Sun Ming sat down, Jin Jin smiled and said, "Even Martial Uncle Sun Ming was alarmed by my Imperial Thunder sect's grand event. It seems like today's apprenticeship ceremony will be very auspicious. Senior Martial brothers, please. Hee, we won't be polite." A red-faced, middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator pointed at a disciple with a jade-like appearance and said, "This child has a shallow thunder body, which is suitable for eyes hibernating thunder movement. I will take the lead." As he spoke, the disciple who was pointed out walked forward and bowed. "Disciple Chong Haoyu greets Master." "Good. If I'm not wrong, he should be a disciple of Chong Mountain's Chong clan, right?" "Yes," Chong Haoyu said respectfully. In aristocratic families produce outstanding people, as expected. "Let's go. Follow this old man to the Jade Archive Hall." The red-faced cultivator waved his hand and smiled at Jin Jin. "Many thanks, Junior Martial Brother Jin." Jin Jin smiled and returned the greeting. After the red-faced cultivator saluted Sun Ming again, he brought Chong Haoyu out of the Spring Thunder Hall. Immediately after, dozens of foundation establishment cultivators stood up and pointed out the selected disciples. Besides Xiaohua, Yuan Bo, Minggu, and Wang Yunxiao were also among them. Seeing everyone being picked out, Xiaohua's heart gradually calmed down. There was a kind of transcendent feeling. All he lacked were cultivation methods and medicinal pills. In this Imperial Thunder sect, cultivation methods were, needless to say, they definitely had them, but what about medicinal pills? He also had the space. When he had the chance, he would go to the Imperial Thunder sect's medicine garden and find some spiritual herbs to transplant into the space. And it would be best if he could find a pill refining room. It would be best if he could still refine pills and have a master guide him. If there weren't any, wasn't there still the technique imparting disciple? From the second layer to the 10th layer of qi refining, he relied on himself. What was there to be afraid of? While Xiaohua was thinking, a beautiful middle-aged woman stood up, pointed at Shui, and said, "This poor Taoist has taken a fancy to this girl. Since she passed the disciple selection, this poor Taoist will take her as a disciple." Shui's face was filled with surprise and joy. She walked out happily and glanced at Xiaohua. Her eyes curved, and she immediately bowed towards the high platform. Xiaohua already knew that Shui had a divine sense mark on her body, so he wasn't surprised. He only smiled. But just as Shui was about to bow, a voice sounded, "Wait." Shui was stunned. She bowed slightly in embarrassment, not knowing what to do. "Martial Uncle Sun?" The beautiful woman was somewhat puzzled. She turned her head and asked, "May I know what Martial Uncle wants?" Martial Nephew, I have something to discuss with Martial Nephew." Sun Ming stood up and pointed at Shui. She smiled and said, "This old one sees that this child's physique is very compatible with this old one's cultivation method. I want to take her as my disciple. I wonder if Martial Niece is willing to part with her?" Not only was Xiaohua stunned, even Shui didn't dare to believe that this was true. Sun Ming was a gold core stage cultivator. For a qi refining stage cultivator, this was an opportunity that could only be encountered and not sought. In an instant, Shui's heart jumped. Her eyes were filled with desire as she waited for the beautiful woman's answer. Reporting to Martial Uncle, Both sides are disciples of my Imperial Thunder sect. For this child to be able to receive Martial Uncle's guidance, her achievements will definitely be even higher. How can this disciple not help? The beautiful woman said with a smile. Good. Sun Ming clapped her hands and said, This old one owes you a favor. If you have any matters, you can come find this old one. Disciple Shui greets master. Shui bowed towards Sun Ming. Shui, stand up and follow master. Sun Ming nodded with a smile. Just as she was about to wave her hand to help Shui up, a loud bang sounded. The Spring Thunder Hall's door was suddenly kicked open by someone. A thin cultivator with a somewhat wrinkled Taoist robe flew in from the outside. Before that cultivator even arrived, his voice had already arrived. Jin, why didn't you send a disciple to inform this old one? This old one already saw a disciple a few days ago. This time, if I can't. Helplessness. Sun Ming frowned slightly and scolded with extreme displeasure. Io, Martial Uncle Sun Ming. That cultivator called helplessness was startled. He immediately landed on the ground of the Spring Thunder Hall and bowed respectfully. Why are you interested in coming to this Spring Thunder Hall? Why can't this old one come? Sun Ming sneered. If this old one didn't come, how would I know that you actually dare to fly in this Spring Thunder Hall, where flying is prohibited? I'm afraid that this Spring Thunder Hall's door would also be destroyed by your kick, right? Good. Martial Uncle Sun Ming knows. Helplessness said with a wronged expression. When this disciple heard that there was a disciple selection 2 days ago, I specially came back from the Myriad Thunder Valley and took some time to choose a suitable disciple from the Thunderclap Peak. After that, I hurriedly returned. You should know that the Myriad Thunder Valley is of great importance. This disciple didn't dare to slack off in the slightest and put all of my attention there. Therefore, not only is my cave residence near the Myriad Thunder Valley, but I also often slack off in the selection of disciples. Beside this disciple, there is no one else who is worthy of being called a good-for-nothing disciple. This time, if I still can't find a suitable disciple, I'm afraid that this disciple's lineage will. As he said that, helplessness scanned with his divine sense. His expression immediately changed, and he said angrily, Jin, where is my disciple? Jin was very helpless. He smiled apologetically and said, Senior Martial Brother Helplessness, it's not that I didn't want to inform you. Isn't Senior Martial Brother already here for the selection of disciples? Junior Martial Brother can't be following behind Senior Martial Brother all the time and remind Senior Martial Brother every day, right? As for which disciple you chose, this disciple also doesn't know. Furthermore, this disciple also doesn't know who took him away. I've already marked them with my divine sense. Who still dares to have ideas about my disciple? The more helplessness spoke, the angrier he became. He directly roared, Martial Nephew Helplessness. Sun Ming glared at him and said, Who didn't even come? Who would recognize your divine sense mark? Moreover, you only came now. The other person has already been registered in the Jade Archive Hall. Even if you want to find a sect master, what reason do you have? But this disciple has an important task for my Imperial Thunder sect, and doesn't have time to come and select disciples. Helplessness's face was bitter. He was just short of rolling his eyes. Xiao Hua stood to the side and looked very ruefully at this Foundation establishment late-stage cultivator with messy hair and stubble on his face. This person was a disciple who truly contributed to the Imperial Thunder sect. Unexpectedly, because of an important task, he didn't come in time to select a disciple. Logically speaking, this kind of cultivator who is worthy of being the pillar of the Imperial Thunder sect should have some special authority. However, from what this cultivator said, it seemed that he only had one disciple. Then, how about this old woman give her disciple to you? Sun Ming said. Don't. Martial Aunt Sun Ming. You're a disciple of the Palace of Sun Thunder, and all your disciples are female cultivators. What would this disciple need a female disciple for? Helplessness heard this and quickly waved his hand. How about this, Senior Martial Brother Helplessness? Jin smiled apologetically and said, The first round of selecting disciples is about to end. Senior Marshal Brother, let's see if there are any suitable candidates. Otherwise, how about the second round of selecting disciples and giving the best performance to Senior Marshal Brother as your disciple? The best performance? At the side, Xiao Hua's heart was moved. This young master got 62 number plates. I'm afraid I got the most in this round of selection, right? Could it be that I have to take this cultivator as my master? Then, Xiao Hua couldn't help but carefully size up Helplessness. Helplessness was a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator, but his messy hair had a lot of gray. His face was thin, but there were wrinkles at the corners of his eyes and on his forehead. He looked like he was over 50 years old. Looking at his Taoist robe, it was also not very particular. Some places were actually a bit dirty. Then looking at the hands on his waist, they were a bit withered, the fingertips were black, and his two legs were slightly bent as he stood there. He looked very inferior to Xiao Yuehong, who used to be Shang Huoming. What? Helplessness said at this time, the good ones were all picked by that group of people. Who would want the remaining rotten cabbage? Back then, wasn't my good-for-nothing disciple. Alas, let's not talk about him. Forget it, forget it. As he spoke, he waved his hand again and prepared to leave. At this time, Sun Ming was unhappy. She scolded, Helplessness. Your myriad Thunder Valley's lineage has a great responsibility and has always had few disciples. From Master Lei to you, it's all the same. Today, with great difficulty, you finally have so many disciples to choose from. How can you throw away your responsibility? Marshal Aunt Sun Ming, the matter of my Thunderclap Palace's Master Lei isn't something you can casually talk about. Helplessness stopped and turned around. How could I have the qualifications to talk about Master Lei? I'm just talking about Marshal Uncle Lei's matter to you. Sun Ming smiled and waved her hand again. There are so many disciples. They won't be worse than your disciple. Pick one and take it back. Your trip out of Myriad Thunder Valley won't be in vain. Fine. He helplessly halted his steps and swept his divine sense across Xiao Hua's body. Instead, his divine sense lingered on a young ninth-layer Qi, refining cultivator for a long time. In the end, he withdrew his divine sense and said, This poor Taoist will wait for the second round. Okay, then I won't leave either. I'll stay and see if there's a disciple who's fated to be with you. Sun Ming smiled and sat down. Soon after, another dozen or so foundation establishment cultivators stood up and took away the disciples they had chosen. Then, Jin Jin waved his hand, and the early foundation establishment cultivator who had been standing below the high platform quickly stepped forward and handed over a jade slip. Jin Jin scanned it with his divine sense and frowned. He raised his eyes and looked below the high platform. His expression was very strange. What's wrong? Marshal Nephew Jin? Sun Ming asked curiously. Oh, nothing. Jin Jin hurriedly said, I'm just a little curious. Hearing this, Sun Ming sat down. She was already very happy to have met Shui today. The disciple selection was Jin Lei Palace's business. Although she was their martial uncle, she couldn't interfere with other people's business for no reason. Senior Marshal Brother Helplessness. Jin Jin turned his head and said with a bright smile, Junior Marshal Brother will now point out the number one disciple in this election to Senior Marshal Brother. I'm sure Senior Marshal Brother will be satisfied. Really? This time, it was Helplessness's turn to be surprised. Xiao Hua, 25 years old, late 10th layer Qi refining. In this election, he obtained 62 tokens and ranked first among 94 disciples. Jin Jin pointed at Xiao Hua, and his voice sounded in the Spring Thunder Hall. Chapter 1534. Is that so? 25 years old? Late stage of the 10th layer? Hoo-hoo. After hearing Jin Jin's words, he couldn't sit still any longer. He jumped out and looked around the stage. At this moment, the cultivators in the 11th layer had already been picked out. The remaining cultivators were either in the 10th or 9th layer, and they all looked very young. Besides, in the cultivation world, who would care about someone's age? Xiaohua was obviously in the 10th layer of the aura refining realm. He was obviously 18 years old and had a slightly childish face. Some knowledgeable cultivators could tell at a glance that he had taken youth-retaining herbs. On the contrary, they wouldn't pay attention to him. That's because an 18-year-old 10th layer of the aura refining realm cultivator was already an outstanding disciple of someone else's sect. How could he come to the Imperial Thunder sect to become a disciple? You? Helplessness's gaze fell on Xiaohua, a disciple of similar age and cultivation level. Xiaohua was actually not slow. When he heard Jin Jin call him, he immediately wanted to step forward. However, Helplessness's movements were even faster. Before Xiaohua could take a step, Helplessness had already jumped out. Disciple Xiaohua greets Senior. Xiaohua stepped forward and bowed in respect. You? Helplessness looked at Xiaohua with flickering eyes and asked, "Are you sure you're 25 years old?" Xiaohua was dumbfounded. Just now, when he told the Foundation Establishment cultivator that he was 23 years old, that was counting the 3 years he spent in Yellow Flower Ridge and the 2 years he spent in secluded cultivation. He actually completely forgot about the 2 years he spent wandering about. No wonder the other cultivators said that he was a liar. Yes, disciple is indeed 25 years old. Xiaohua respectfully replied, "Your face is so young. You must have taken youth-retaining herbs, right?" Helplessness's face showed a trace of disgust. Oh, no wonder this cultivator scanned me several times with his divine sense, but didn't pay attention to me. Xiaohua understood. He then smiled apologetically and said, "Disciple didn't know. When I was 18 years old, I became like this. I haven't changed at all." Oh, Helplessness's face clearly showed a trace of a smile. He nodded and said, "That's good. I really hate those cultivator families' male disciples taking youth-retaining herbs. Female cultivators take them for beauty. What's the use of men being beautiful?" Helpless, martial nephew. On the high platform, Sun Ming frowned and said, "Hee, this disciple is being unreasonable." Helplessly, his mood was greatly improved. After speaking to Sun Ming, he turned his head and asked, "Which aristocratic family are you from?" Without waiting for Xiaohua to speak, Jin Jin, who was on the high platform, said in a clear voice, "Senior brother Helplessness, you've made a mistake this time. Xiaohua isn't from any cultivation sect. He's a rogue cultivator." "Ah, a rogue cultivator?" Hearing Jin Jin's words, not only were they helpless, even the other cultivators present, including Sun Ming, were stunned. A rogue cultivator at the 10th layer of qi refining. And, at the age of 25, this was really rare in the country of Xi's cultivation world. But then, Sun Ming sighed. Sure enough, he sighed helplessly and shook his head. "What a pity, Xiaohua. If you weren't a loose cultivator, I would have accepted you as my disciple. But you're a loose cultivator, so this old man can only reluctantly part with you." Xiaohua was greatly surprised. He cupped his hands and said anxiously, "Senior, I don't blame you for not accepting me as your disciple. But why can't I, a loose cultivator, take Senior as my master?" "Senior isn't a loose cultivator, so you don't know the hardships of being a loose cultivator. Ever since I was at the 2nd layer of qi refining, I didn't have any cultivation methods or medicinal pills. I went through many difficulties to obtain some scattered cultivation methods. On one hand, I painstakingly cultivated, and on the other, I had to search for medicinal pills. Now, after spending endless effort, I finally reached the 10th layer of qi refining, and even passed the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciple selection. Senior, just because I'm a loose cultivator, you refuse to accept me. Isn't this too cruel for me? Alas, he sighed helplessly and said, "Although I'm not a loose cultivator, before I entered the Imperial Thunder Sect, I was a disciple of a small cultivation aristocratic family. How could I not know the hardships of loose cultivators like you? Moreover, my previous disciple was also similar to a loose cultivator. If you say that I treat loose cultivators differently, then you're being unfair to me." Seeing the anger on Xiaohua's face, Helplessness felt as if he was looking at his former self. He sighed again and said, "Didn't you say just now Ever since you were at the second layer of chi refining, you didn't have a complete cultivation method. All of your cultivation methods were incomplete. Then let me ask you, how many cultivation methods did you change after you reached the 10th layer of chi refining? 3. Xiao Hua answered honestly. Then what about you? Helplessness suddenly asked a nearby 10th layer chi refining cultivator. Reporting to senior, of course it's one. That cultivator said very proudly, Junior's clan has a complete set of chi refining cultivation methods, from the first layer of chi refining to the 12th layer of chi refining. Xiao Hua, do you understand? Helplessness didn't explain and asked Xiao Hua somewhat pitifully. Alas, disciple understands. Xiao Hua's face was also bleak, and his tone was filled with boundless loneliness. Different cultivation methods have different methods of tempering the meridians, and the degree of tempering is also different. Using different cultivation methods to temper the meridians to the high level of chi refining, there definitely isn't a single cultivation method that tempers the meridians thoroughly from beginning to end, tempering them completely. If the meridians are like that, true chi is also like that. True chi tempered by different cultivation methods will always be impure in the end, and it's really disadvantageous for breaking through to foundation building. Excellent. On the high platform, Sun Ming also clapped her hands. What Xiao Hua said is extremely true. I didn't think that a young, loose cultivator would actually have this kind of knowledge. If he wasn't already at the 10th layer of chi refining, Martial Nephew Helplessness would have definitely accepted him as a disciple. That's right, destiny makes fools of people. Xiao Hua, if you were at the second layer of chi refining right now, if you were only 14 or 15 years old, but based on your comprehension ability, I would have accepted you as a disciple no matter what. Helplessness nodded. If the meridians and true chi are like that, then the realm and cultivation are even more so. What one needs to cultivate and what one needs to sharpen in one layer of a cultivation method is all fixed. And what one can't do in one layer of a cultivation method, in the next layer, one definitely has to do. There won't be anything left out. So much so that between each layer of a realm, there will be a bottleneck. This bottleneck is the absolute opportunity to sharpen one's cultivation in the current layer. If you don't break through the bottleneck and achieve the cultivation you need to achieve in this layer, then this cultivation method won't let you enter the next layer. Xiao Hua, from the second layer of chi refining to the 10th layer of chi refining, do you rarely encounter bottlenecks? Yes, disciple rarely encounters bottlenecks. Xiao Hua nodded. Exactly, because you're cultivating multiple cultivation techniques, there are flaws in every realm. Your foundation isn't solid, so your cultivation techniques shouldn't be able to advance. However, with your top-notch aptitude, these flaws are covered up. That's why you can't sense the bottleneck, and the bottleneck will appear when you break through to the foundation establishment realm. Disciple understands. Although helplessness didn't finish speaking, Xiao Hua already understood. Perhaps the bottleneck of the first 12 layers of chi refining would appear at the end, forming an insurmountable peak. Foundation building was the most difficult threshold in his life. So, Xiao Hua, don't blame me, Helplessness said apologetically. However, without waiting for Helplessness to finish speaking, Jin laughed on the high platform. Senior brother Helplessness, please wait for a moment. I still have some things I haven't read out. Helplessness rolled his eyes and said, even if you say a deluge of heavenly flowers, I only have one disciple with no future. I don't want to take in any more burdens. Jin ignored him and read, Xiao Hua, concealed fire physique. The fire attribute is unyielding and tyrannical. In the disciple's first test, the fire attribute in his body caused the spirit of the mirror to swell and burst. Concealed fire physique? How is this possible? Helplessness was stupefied. His eyes emitted an incomparably pleasant surprise, and he almost trembled a bit. Which disciple tested this? Are you serious? Haha, I'll let Junior Brother know. Xiao Hua destroyed the spirit of the mirror, and it was my Jin Lei Palace's martial uncle Jin Qing who personally verified it. This record was also personally written by Marshal Uncle Jin Qing. Haha, good, good, good. Helplessness heard this and raised his head to laugh loudly. I was wondering how a loose cultivator could rely on 3 unorthodox techniques to cultivate to the 10th layer of qi refining at the age of 25. It turns out that he has the rare, concealed fire physique. Moreover, the fire attribute is unyielding and tyrannical. With the help of this concealed fire physique, any bottleneck is nothing difficult. Then, this disciple Xiao Hua, do you want it? If you don't accept him, I'm afraid the other senior brothers will make a move. Jin asked with a smile. Haha, isn't this nonsense? I have always worked hard for the Imperial Thunder Sect. I just picked a disciple, but he was snatched away by someone else. The heavens have opened their eyes this time and made this group of old things blind. This concealed fire physique, TSK, they actually made a mistake and let I take advantage of it. How can I not want a disciple given by the heavens? Disciple greets master. Xiao Hua was overjoyed when he heard this and stepped forward to bow and salute. Good disciple, good disciple. Helplessly, he helped Xiao Hua up and said, You will follow master to register in the Jade Archive Hall. In the future, you can cultivate well and make my myriad Thunder Valley proud. Yes, disciple will definitely, Xiao Hua said with a smile. Good, helplessness. Since you have accepted a disciple that you are proud of, this old woman should also leave. You and I can go to the Jade Archive Hall together. Sun Ming stood up and said. On the other side, Shui was also happy and looked at Xiao Hua with eyes full of affection. Marshal uncle, please. Helplessly taking a step back, he bowed and said. However, at this time, Xiao Hua, who was full of joy, also bowed. Just as he bowed, he suddenly felt a faint kacha sound coming from inside his meridians. A medicinal liquid that was several times more spiritual fire than the fire essence flame crystal, but much less pure, suddenly appeared in his meridians. In a flash, his entire meridians expanded. Not good. The restriction of the clear flower pill has been broken. Xiao Hua suddenly woke up, and his soul immediately flew out of his body. He no longer cared about etiquette and raised his hand to pull helplessness in front of him and shouted, Master, save me. What? Helplessness was very displeased, but when he turned around and saw Xiao Hua's face was completely red, he was also greatly shocked. He immediately understood with a sweep of his divine sense and didn't have time to ask. His hands formed seals, and seals entered Xiao Hua's body. Chapter 1535. What kind of cultivation base is Wu Xian at? Wu Xian is a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator. With a few hand seals, the bright flower pills in Xiao Hua's meridians immediately shackled. Why do you have? Wu Xian was shocked and asked as soon as the restriction took effect. Xiao Hua interrupted Wu Xian's question and said, Disciple has something to report. Master, please find a quiet place. Many of the Spring Thunder Hall's disciples and cultivators on the platform had already left, but half of them were still there. How could Xiao Hua let others know? Although these cultivators were all disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect, Wu Xian's face was full of suspicion. He turned to look at Sun Ming, who was also puzzled, and said, Marshal Aunt Sun Ming, please wait in the hall for a moment. Disciple has something to ask Xiao Hua. No problem. Go ahead. I'll wait for you outside the hall. Sun Ming nodded with a smile, but Shui looked at Xiao Hua with worry. Come with me. With a wave of his hand, helplessness brought Xiao Hua to a side chamber of the Spring Thunder Hall. After the time it took to smoke a cigarette, helplessness brought Xiao Hua out of the side chamber. At this moment, helplessness's face was filled with shock, ecstasy, suspicion, and confusion. As he walked, he pondered. When they arrived outside the hall, Sun Ming was still standing there waiting. Next to her were several cultivators who had chosen their disciples. Presumably, they were going to the Jade Archive Hall together. Wu Xian smiled bitterly and bowed. Marshal Aunt Sun, disciple, has some urgent matters. For the time being, Disciple can't go to the Jade Archive Hall with Marshall Ant and the other junior brothers. And what matters? Xiaohua, is there anything suspicious? Sun Ming stared at Xiaohua and asked. This, I can't tell Marshall Ant soon for the time being. Disciple will talk about it after Disciple goes to the Heavenly Thunder Palace to see the sect master. Wu Xian's words contained a trace of excitement. Xiaohua, who was at the side, was slightly unhappy. Earlier, he'd warned repeatedly for a long time not to reveal anything. Who knew if there were any spies from the Shanghua sect in the Imperial Thunder sect? However, if he directly said that he wanted to go to the Heavenly Thunder Palace, then he would definitely say that the head of the 8 great Thunder Palaces, that is, the sect master of the Imperial Thunder sect, was there. How could helplessness not cause others to be surprised when he said that? Sure enough, Sun Ming was shocked. The several cultivators beside her were also shocked. Shui and the other disciples also had puzzled looks on their faces. Shui was even somewhat anxious. Xiaohua shook his head slightly to signal her to be at ease, but the concern in Shui's eyes didn't lessen at all. Helplessness naturally had its own reasons. When Sun Ming and the others heard that it was the Heavenly Thunder Hall, they did not ask any further questions. Although they had looks of shock on their faces, they still smiled and said, "Then you had better hurry and go. For such an important matter, if you do not have the sect master's approval, you must not reveal it to us." Many thanks, Marshal Uncle Sun Ming. Helplessly, he bowed in greeting. With a wave of his hand, he pulled Xiaohua to his side. However, a light thunderclap could be heard in midair. Helplessly, he executed the lightning escape and flew far away. Marshal nephews, let's go to the Jade Archive Hall. Sun Ming glanced at Helplessness, who was running away in a hurry, and led everyone to the Jade Archive Hall. Shui walked to the back, looking at the sky with worry. Although the lightning escape was fast, the Lei Imo mountain range was indeed very big. From the Zhenlei Palace to the Heavenly Thunder Palace, it took them almost the time to eat a meal. Damn it, this is really too big, isn't it? Xiaohua followed Helplessness and flew. He did not reveal a single trace of transcendence energy. Seeing that Helplessness was flying several times faster than him, he could not help but be shocked by the strength of the Imperial Thunder sect. However, he was immediately dumbfounded. This is the Imperial Thunder sect that is second only to the 3 great sects of Xiuzhen. It is on the same level as the Huanhua sect. How could their sect be small? Take Shanghuaming as an example. If the entire Yellow Flower Ridge was taken out, it might not be smaller than the Imperial Thunder sect. Looking at the enormous mountain peak, Xiaohua realized that there was actually a palace that was even more majestic than the Zhenlei Palace. It had a grandeur that was even more dazzling than the Zhenlei Palace. Xiaohua knew that this was most likely the Zhenlei Palace. Sure enough, he heard Helplessness say in a low voice, "Xiaohua, this is the Thunder Immortal Peak where the sect leader of the Imperial Thunder sect, Qian Lezi, resides. The Heavenly Thunder Palace is just ahead." As he said that, he helplessly pointed at the group of palaces, before continuing, "When we reach the Great Thunder Hall, you must clearly tell the sect master everything that you have said to this old man earlier. Senior Marshal Brother Qian Xinghua is a disciple of the Heavenly Thunder Palace and is from the sect leader's branch. He is also my junior Marshal Brother. I did not expect such a thing to happen. Alas, you have contributed so much to my Imperial Thunder sect. I'm afraid you will be taken into the Heavenly Thunder Palace by the sect leader. This is also the reason why I did not bring you to the Jade Archive Hall." Master, I called you Master just now. How can I go back on my words now? Xiaohua said with a smile. "You are thinking too much." A hint of joy flashed through Helplessness's eyes, but he immediately shook his head. "My myriad Thunder Valley has always had a hard time. Their cultivation is not particularly outstanding, and the disciples they teach are also mediocre. Your hidden fire physique is buried in my myriad Thunder Valley. All right, let's not talk about this. It won't be too late to talk about it when we reach the Great Thunder Palace." Helplessness waved his hand slightly and landed in front of a palace. This palace was different from the Spring Thunder Palace of the Imperial Thunder Palace. In front of the door was a peaked Chi, refining disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect guarding. Seeing helplessness approach, he walked forward and cupped his hands. "Martial Uncle, which palace have you come to the Great Thunder Palace? Please report your name." "I am Helplessness of the shocking Thunder Palace's myriad Thunder Valley. Today I have brought Xiaohua to see the sect leader. I have an extremely urgent matter to report." Helplessness returned the salute and said, "All right, Martial Uncle knows that the sect leader is not in the Great Thunder Palace right now. Only Martial Ancestor Miyu of the Canlay Palace is on guard. How about this disciple report to Martial Ancestor now?" That disciple said with a smile. "This is the only way." Helplessness wrinkled his brows and slapped his hand, taking out a waste tablet from his storage pouch and handing it over. "This is my waste tablet. I would like to trouble Martial Nephew to report to Martial Ancestor." That disciple took Helplessness's waste tablet and went in. However, after a short while, he returned and said helplessly, "Martial Ancestor Miyu invites Martial Uncle to speak in the palace." All right, Helplessness took the waste tablet and didn't say anything else. He waved his hand and was about to bring Xiaohua in. "Martial Uncle." That disciple extended his hand, stopping Xiaohua as he said very discontentedly, "Martial Uncle, don't forget, aura refining disciples are not allowed to enter Colossal Thunder Hall unless they are summoned by the Palace Lord on duty." Sigh. Helplessness slapped his forehead and said very regretfully, "Look at me. I should have explained it just now. How about this, Martial Nephew? Please report to Martial Ancestor again. This is the new disciple who passed the selection this time, Xiaohua." Helplessness had no choice but to say it again. "Helplessness, why did you come to the Great Thunder Palace instead of guarding the myriad Thunder Valley?" Just as Helplessness was explaining, a melodious voice came from Adair. This voice is somewhat familiar. Xiaohua didn't think he knew any senior from the Imperial Thunder sect. However, when he really looked up, he couldn't help but stare blankly. He saw a cultivator flying in midair. That cultivator looked very young and had an ordinary appearance. However, his complexion was somewhat red, and the only thing that was somewhat confusing was his sparse eyebrows. Wasn't this the mysterious cultivator Xiaohua met in front of the Thunder Accumulation Cave, whose cultivation was unknown? That cultivator descended from Adair. Helplessness hurriedly went forward and saluted, saying, "Helplessness greets Martial Ancestor Lei Meng." "Martial Ancestor Lei Meng? Thundermeng Taoist?" Hearing this, Xiaohua immediately remembered what Sun Ming said in the Spring Thunder Palace. "Get up. What are you doing here?" Thundermeng Taoist waved his hand and helped Helplessness up. He casually glanced at Xiaohua and turned his head to ask Helplessness. However, just as he finished speaking, Thundermeng Taoist seemed to remember something and turned his head to ask Xiaohua. "It seemed to be that loose cultivator from the Thunder Accumulation Cave called Xiao. All right." Hearing this, Xiaohua's heart was filled with joy. He didn't expect that a nascent soul senior would actually remember him, a small, loose cultivator at the second level of Qi refining. He immediately stepped forward and saluted. "Disciple Xiaohua greets Martial Ancestor." "Martial Ancestor?" Thundermeng Taoist was slightly stunned. Helplessness, who was beside him, felt that his brain wasn't enough. He muttered, "Martial Ancestor, Xiaohua. He's a disciple who passed this time's selection and was accepted by me as a disciple." You passed the disciple selection?" Thundermeng Taoist was stunned. Looking at Xiaohua's cultivation, he was even more shocked. "Xiaohua, it's only been 3 years. You actually went from the second level of Qi refining to the 10th level of Qi refining? This is bad," Xiaohua complained in his heart. Although this person was already his master, but going from the second level of Qi refining to the 10th level of Qi refining, this kind of unimaginable cultivation was something that could only happen in a dream. How could he dare to let this kind of thing happen to him? Xiaohua promptly saluted and said, "Yes, Martial Ancestor knows. That day, Junior was a bit secretive from martial ancestor. At that time, disciple's cultivation was damaged. Although my cultivation was at the 9th level of chi refining, I could only use the magic power of the 3rd level of chi refining. I'm afraid that martial ancestor misunderstood. Oh, so it's like this. I was wondering why I felt that your magic power was much higher than others of the same level. So it's like this. Thunder Ming Taoist nodded. In the eyes of a nascent soul cultivator like him, chi refining cultivators were like infants. How could an adult accurately distinguish the strength of an infant? Then you're also not a loose cultivator, right? Thunder Ming Taoist didn't care about Xiao Hua's concealment and laughed. Disciple is indeed a loose cultivator. That day in the Thunder Accumulation Cave, I really wanted to join Tianqi and do some things. Xiao Hua almost wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. That day, martial ancestor evaluated disciple's cultivation. Disciple didn't know how to explain, so no matter. That day, you and I didn't know each other. I only saw that your cultivation was not bad, so I casually evaluated you. You can't take it seriously. However, I didn't expect that today you would actually enter my Imperial Thunder sect and even become a disciple of my Thunderous Palace. You and this old man do have some fate. Thunder Ming Taoist said with a smile, still looking like the senior who helped Xiao Hua that day in the Thunder Accumulation Cave. Martial Ancestor. Yes, Martial Ancestor knows. This time, Xiao Hua has come to the Great Thunder Hall to report to the Sect Master. At the side, seeing the two people actually starting to reminisce about old times at the same time he was happy in his heart. He was also somewhat anxious. Chapter 1536. Oh, that's right. Xiao Hua, what business do you have with Wu Hen? Thunder Ming Taoist nodded. Grandmaster, please lay down the silence talisman. Xiao Hua bowed and said, Oh, Thunder Ming Taoist waved his hand and laid down a silence talisman restriction. He smiled and said, You're quite cautious, just like you were at the Thunder Accumulation Cave. However, when Xiao Hua said the 3 words, Qian Qing Hua, Thunder Ming Taoist's expression changed greatly. He waved his hand and said, Xiao Hua, who did you tell about this matter? Yes, Grandmaster knows. Disciple has only told Master. I didn't reveal a single word to anyone else. Xiao Hua said respectfully. Good. Thunder Ming Taoist said good 3 times in a row. He waved his hand, and the silence talisman restriction instantly shattered. You don't need to repeat such an important matter a second time. You should personally report to Sect Master. Sect Master is temporarily not in the Great Thunder Hall. Xiao Hua said helplessly. That's easy. Thunder Ming Taoist waved his hand and used the Thunderlight sound transmission technique. A bolt of lightning rapidly flew toward the place on the Thunder Immortal Peak. Thunder Ming Taoist looked at Xiao Hua. The more he looked at him, the more he liked him. He said very amiably, Yes, I'll listen to Grandmaster's instructions. Xiao Hua already had a good impression of Thunder Ming Taoist. Now that he had become his grand disciple, he was satisfied and replied respectfully. The person at the side looked on helplessly and rejoiced in his heart. He thought to himself, From the looks of it, it seems that Grandmaster has a very good impression of this Xiao Hua. Fortunately, I accepted Xiao Hua as my disciple earlier. Otherwise, wouldn't Xiao Hua have become my martial uncle? Rumble, rumble, rumble. Several figures flew out from somewhere on the Thunder Immortal Peak. Like rolling thunder, they quickly rushed to the front of the Great Thunder Hall. When they appeared, they were Master Qianlazi, Fairy Xianhua, and the others. Master Qianlazi's face was full of joy. He had already spread out his divine sense from far away and firmly locked onto the unfamiliar Xiao Hua. When they came close, Master Qianlazi's eyes that contained thunderlight swept over Xiao Hua, full of pressure. My goodness, this is a master who is even more powerful than Lei Meng Jinren. Xiao Hua's heart trembled, and he hurriedly bowed in greeting, but he was still too late. Lei Meng Taoist and Wu Hen had already bowed, and Wu Hen respectfully said, Myriad thunder valleys Wu Hen greets sovereign. Fortunately, Xiao Hua's disciple Xiao Hua greets sovereign was heard clearly by Qianlei. Disciple? Qianlei was a bit surprised, but then he laughed. Haha, Qian Xinhua is smart for once. Then he turned to instruct the disciples of Great Thunder Hall. Go, call Palace Master Jin Sheng of Great Thunder Hall over. This guy has also made a great contribution. The disciple nodded and immediately sent a message. Qianlei waved his hand and said, Let's go, Xiaohua. We'll talk inside. Yes, disciple obeys. Xiaohua bowed respectfully and hid behind Wu Hai. Qianlei and the others naturally went in first, while Helpless and Xiaohua walked at the back. Don't be fooled by Helpless' arrogance in the Spring Thunder Hall. Here, he was extremely respectful, even more careful than Xiaohua. The style of the Great Thunder Palace was not much different from the Spring Thunder Palace, except that the interior of the palace was much larger. Two incomparably huge pillars supported the roof of the palace. Lightning was lingering on the pillars, and countless strange patterns were emerging one after another. The surrounding jade walls and the roof of the palace were also filled with purple talismans that were faintly swimming about, displaying their endless means. Great Thunder Hall didn't have a high platform, but there were 8 praying mats floating in the air. Qianlei and the other palace masters sat on their own praying mats. Qianlei waved his hand, and a light purple thunderbolt gathered on the pillar in the center of the hall. The pillar emitted a tricolored brilliance, and the brilliance went straight up the pillar. After rushing to the roof of the hall, it quickly spread in all directions, and in the blink of an eye, covered the entire hall. Xiaohua, tell me about your encounter with Qinghua. Qianlei was very calm, and after seeing that the restriction of the Great Thunder Hall had taken effect, he slowly asked. Yes, disciple. Xiaohua took a step forward. Although there was some fear in his heart, he suppressed his excitement and prepared to report. Sect Master, why don't we wait for Jin Sheng and Dui Jia to come first? This child deliberately wanted to contribute to the sect and thought of the method of recruiting disciples, but he was scolded by you. If he didn't hear it with his own ears, how could he be at ease? Fairy Xianhua said with a light smile. When did I scold them? Qianlei's mood was very good, and he said with a smile, That day, I even encouraged him to recruit a few more disciples. Xiaohua, what did Qian Xinghua ask you to bring back? Seeing that Qianlei didn't ask, Thunder Talisman's spiritual master didn't ask. Xiaohua would be his direct disciple in the future, so there was no need to be polite. Qianlei wasn't in a hurry. Hearing Thunder Talisman's spiritual master's question, his ears perked up and his eyes contained a trace of expectation as he looked at Xiaohua. Seeing the 6 nascent soul cultivators looking at him with 12 pairs of eyes, although there was no pressure, cold sweat gradually dripped down from Xiaohua's forehead. Damn, this nascent soul cultivator is really powerful. Just as gaze alone can kill me. A chi condensation cultivator. Xiaohua secretly sighed. He patted his hand and took out the bead from his storage bag. When the bead was taken out from the storage pouch, countless tiny purple lightning bolts immediately flashed. The lightning bolts lingered around the bead and gradually grew larger. Rumble, rumble, rumble. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, the 4 walls of the enormous Thunder Palace, the roof of the palace, and the 2 giant pillars simultaneously flickered in sync with the lightning bolts surrounding the bead. With a flash, the lightning gathered around the bead and was absorbed by the bead at a speed visible to the naked eye. This wasn't the end. Immediately after, the second wave of lightning appeared and was also absorbed by the bead. Thunder devouring bead. Seeing this, Qianlei and the others revealed extremely shocked expressions. Xiaohua only heard their voices. His eyes blurred and his hand became lighter. The thunder-devouring bead in his hand disappeared. Xiaohua wasn't surprised. He secretly touched the cold sweat on his forehead and looked at Qianlei, who was floating in the air with the thunder-devouring bead in his hand. At this moment, Qian Zi's face was filled with shock, surprise, and shock. At this moment, the thunder-devouring bead that was flickering with purple lightning was blocked by an invisible barrier, and the lightning couldn't escape from Master Qianlei's palm in the slightest. At this moment, the barrier around the Great Thunder Palace had returned to its previous state, and one couldn't see any difference. Leighton Taoist and the others were like Qianlei. They could no longer sit still. Their bodies floated up and surrounded Qianlei. Their eyes were fixed on the lightning-devouring bead. The lightning-devouring bead was reflected in their eyes. After a while, Master Qianlei waved his hand, and another thunderbolt hit the pillar. The same tricolored light flashed, and Xiaohua was a bit confused. At this moment, Qianlei lowered his head and said, "Xiaohua, I have some difficulties. There's something I need to tell you." Xiaohua was stunned. He bowed and said, "Sect Master, please tell me what you need." "This thing is indeed brought back by Senior Uncle Qian Xinghua. There's nothing else." "Haha, good boy, I'm not talking about this." Qianlei smiled and said, "Xinghua hasn't returned to the thunder-controlling sect, and his spirit tablet hasn't been damaged. As far as I know, he has probably used the soul-concealing technique, which is a secret technique of our sect, to hide all of his life force and aura. I'm sure you know that the Shanghua sect, Xuanyin School, and Seven Skill sect are still looking for him." Hearing this, Xiaohua understood. Without any hesitation, he said with a smile, "Sect Master, please don't worry. Since I've already come to the Imperial Thunder sect, I've already offended the 3 sections. Besides, I'm now a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. Why should I be afraid of them? Even if they have some dirty tricks up their sleeves, how can I not trust Sect Master?" "Good, good, good." Qianlei shouted 3 times in a row, then clapped his hands. Instantly, the restrictive spells around the thunder-devouring bead were broken, and the lightning bolts hovering around the thunder-devouring bead were enlarged once again. At the same time, because the restrictive spells of the huge Thunder Palace were no longer isolated, countless dark clouds suddenly appeared in the sky above the Thunder Immortal Peak and the Thunder Emo Mountain Range. Strands of lightning bolts were flashing in the dark clouds, like swimming pythons, which were accumulating power to strike down at the huge Thunder Palace. Moreover, it was unknown just how many restrictions within the Thundercore Mountain Range were also beginning to shine with brilliance following the appearance of the dark clouds. Numerous runes gradually flickered, gradually converging into threads of lightning, just like the restrictions of the colossal Thunder Palace, eagerly about to be thrown into the extremely distant thunder-devouring orb. Alas, I was lucky. Qianlei let out a long sigh. He waved his hand, and an extremely powerful seal surrounded the thunder-devouring bead. As the lightning from the thunder-devouring bead retracted, the seal around the Thunder Emo Mountain Range returned to normal. The dark clouds above the mountain range also gradually disappeared. At the foot of the Thunder Emo Mountain Range, many disciples of the splendid sect, Xuanyin School, and Qiqiao sect didn't relax their vigilance just because the Imperial Thunder sect disciple selection was over. Less than 100 li away from the Thunder Emo Mountain Range, several late-stage Foundation establishment cultivators were sitting cross-legged at the foot of a tall mountain. 2 of them were the male and female cultivators from the splendid sect that Xiaohua met in Shihuang Town. Similarly, the male cultivator looked at the peaceful scene and raised his voice. "Junior Marshal Sister Qi, is there any news from the sky, Thunder Peak?" "Senior Marshal Brother Gao, in the past few days, only those who didn't pass the Imperial Thunder Sect's test went down the mountain." "What news could there be?" "They didn't even stop Xiaohua from going up the mountain." "If that Xiaohua really went up the mountain, how could he be so stupid as to go down the mountain again?" Junior Marshal Sister Qi's complexion wasn't good. Needless to say, Junior Marshal Sister Qi and Senior Marshal Brother Gao did stop Xiaohua in Shihuang Town that day. However, they didn't find any trace of the thunder-devouring bead on Xiaohua's body, so they easily let him go. Later, things changed, especially when Xiaohua strangely escaped from the hands of the 3 sects Foundation establishment cultivators. This made the splendid sect realize that Xiaohua was different. Senior Marshal Brother Gao and Junior Marshal Sister Chi didn't dare to hide the matter and reported it to the splendid sex master. When he heard that Xiaohua was stopped by his own disciples, the splendid sex master almost flew into a rage. Therefore, these two unlucky late-stage foundation establishment cultivators were naturally sent to the foot of the mountain to atone for their crimes. Chapter 1537. Hee, Junior Marshal Sister Chi, don't worry. That Xiaohua guy was only in the 4th layer of the Qi refining realm, and we've already searched his storage pouch. There's no way he could have taken the thunder-devouring bead. All of our plans are just guesses, the sex punishment. Senior Marshal Brother Gao, didn't you see how many storage pouches Xiaohua had? If he put the thunder-devouring bead in his storage pouch and buried it somewhere, there wouldn't be any trace of it on his body. Junior Marshal Sister Chi sighed. We should have used soul searching to force him to tell us the truth. How could we? We're only at the foundation establishment stage. Even Master and Martial Ancestor don't dare to use the soul-searching technique lightly. If we use it, that little cultivator will definitely become an idiot. Senior Brother Gao exclaimed. Senior Marshal Brother Gao is really soft-hearted. A foundation-building middle-stage cultivator laughed. If it was I would have used soul-searching first. Who cares if he's an idiot? Your Xuanyin School's disciples can. They're all decisive. Junior Marshal Sister Chi glanced at him and said, My Senior Marshal Brother Gao felt that it wasn't easy for that rogue cultivator to cultivate, so he didn't have the heart to kill him. If he really was a thunder-controlling sect disciple, Senior Marshal Brother Gao would have done it already. Seeing Junior Marshal Sister Chi protecting Senior Marshal Brother Gao, the Xuanyin School disciple looked at the smiling 7 possibilities sect disciple and tactfully shut his mouth. Look, what's that? The smiling 7 possibilities sect disciple's eyes lit up as he pointed at the direction Senior Marshal Brother Gao was facing. Thunder. Junior Marshal Sister Chi and Senior Marshal Brother Gao turned around and saw the dark clouds and lightning above Mount Lama. Their expressions changed greatly, as if they lost their souls. Senior Marshal Brother Gao, fellow Taoist Chi? The 7 Possibilities sect and Xuanyin School disciples clearly hadn't been to Shihuang Town and didn't see the thunder-devouring beads phenomenon. The celestial phenomenon soon disappeared. Looking at the dissipating dark clouds above the Lama Mountains, Junior Marshal Sister Chi sighed and waved her hand, sending out several message talismans. Senior Marshal Brother Gao turned his head with a wry smile and said, Fellow Taoists, send a message to your respective sections. That thing has fallen into the hands of the thunder-controlling sect. Could it be that Qianqinghua is back? It's still that little itinerant cultivator. Everyone was a little confused as they asked all at once. Fellow Taoists, these? I don't know either. Senior Marshal Brother Gao cupped his hands and said, I have only seen the strange phenomenon of that thing in Shihuang Town. As for the next step, I still need the guidance of the sect. With that, Senior Marshal Brother Gao sighed and sat down again. He closed his eyes. It was unknown whether he was regretting or cultivating. The other cultivators looked at each other and sent out their communication talismans. They were all waiting for the orders from their sections. Leaving aside the panic of the Foundation establishment disciples at the foot of the Imperial Thunder School in the Great Thunder Hall, Master Qianlazy had just sealed the thunder-devouring bead and was about to put it into his storage bag when he heard a surprised shout from below the hall. Sect Master. Is this the thing Qinghua found? Xiaohua turned his head and saw that it was a male and female cultivator who were quite old. They quickly walked over with happy expressions. That child. Xiaohua suddenly thought of Fairy Xianhua's words and felt that it was absurd for no reason. Haha, Jinsheng, you came just in time. Look at this thunder-devouring bead. Master Qianlazy opened his hand, and the thunder-devouring bead flew in the air again. Qinghua found the thunder-devouring bead? This is the thunder-devouring bead that our sect's ancestor Qianyun found? Jin Sheng's face was even more excited than the others. Ha! It is this thunder-devouring bead. Master Qian Lazy smiled and put away the thunder-devouring bead. He said, Ancestor Qian Yun found the thunder-devouring bead and observed the birth and death of lightning in the thunder-devouring bead. He comprehended the thunder amplification technique and thus ascended. That was why the Imperial Thunder School's orthodoxy was left on the Dawn Rain continent. All the formations and restrictions in the Thunder Mountain range were set up according to the thunder amplification technique. Our Imperial Thunder School's foundation, the Thunder Pool, was also refined by Ancestor Qian Yun according to the thunder-devouring bead. Today, our Imperial Thunder School has obtained the thunder-devouring bead. This is a sign of our school's prosperity. Congratulations, Sect Master. Fairy Xian Hua cupped her hands and said, With the thunder-devouring bead, Sect Master can also comprehend the supreme scriptures of our school. Your cultivation will also improve. It won't be hard to reach the spirit-severing stage. Congratulations, Sect Master. Taoist Lei Meng and the others also bowed and said, Thank you all for your good intentions. Master Qian Lazy seemed to be in good spirits. He smiled and said, The path that our school can explore is also a path that everyone could take. The future of our Imperial Thunder School is still in the hands of all of us. We are willing to do our best for the revival of our school. Taoist Miyu and the others replied with a smile. Good boy. Raise the clouds and ascend. Xiao Hua, who was at the side, was already fascinated. He thought, this Imperial Thunder School actually has a cultivator who can ascend. The Imperial Thunder School's Sect Master is only a nascent soul stage cultivator, not even a spirit-severing stage cultivator. This Imperial Thunder School actually has a cultivation method for ascending. Ascending? What kind of realm is that? This thunder-devouring bead looks like its power is still limited. I'm afraid it will take a long time to refine it. As for comprehending it, it's still too early. Master Qian Lazy sat back down on the praying mat. Everyone else also sat down. Then, Master Qian Lazy said lightly, That's right. If it's a fully formed thunder-devouring bead, how can a foundation establishment stage kid like Qing Hua get it? Fairy Xian Hua said with a smile. Qian Qinghua chuckled. Actually, for my Imperial Thunder sect, comprehending the thunder amplification method is secondary. The most important thing is that the thunder-devouring bead must be in the hands of my Imperial Thunder sect. Why is that? Dui Jie asked curiously. Is it possible that all the thunder-devouring beads in the world must be taken into our Imperial Thunder School? You little girl. Taoist Lei Meng scolded with a smile. All the thunder-devouring beads in the world? It's already not bad to have a thunder-devouring bead in 1,000 years, 10,000 years, or even 100,000 years. According to our school's records, the thunder-devouring bead that Ancestor Qian obtained was something that happened tens of thousands of years ago. Reverend Me, you said with a smile. Dui Jie and Jinsheng's cultivation is still low. They don't know the origin of the thunder-devouring bead. Plus, they came too late and didn't see the power of the thunder-devouring bead. They also don't know what the thunder-devouring bead does to the restrictions of our Imperial Thunder School. Dui Jie and Jinsheng looked at each other. They were both confused. Master Qian Lazy said with a smile, Didn't I just say it? The thunder-devouring bead contains thunder birth and destruction. As the name suggests, the thunder-devouring bead can devour thunder and lightning. The restrictions and formations of our Imperial Thunder School all originate from the Thunder Pool. Isn't the thunder-devouring bead the nemesis of all the formations and restrictions of our Imperial Thunder School? If Shanghua sect, Qiqiao sect, or Xuanyin sect get their hands on the thunder-devouring bead, it's fine if they don't covet our Imperial Thunder School. But if they do, they can use the thunder-devouring bead to break all the formations of our Imperial Thunder School. Jin Sheng and Dui Jie suddenly realized. Clearly, they were scared. They must know the use of the thunder-devouring bead, that's why. Jin Sheng said fiercely. But you're wrong. Reverend Lei Tan waved his hand and said, First, the thunder-devouring bead was snatched by Qinghua. Second, If Sun Yunzi knew the use of the thunder-devouring bead, he would have done it himself. Ha ha ha, Lei Tan, you're right. Master Qian lazy laughed. Sect Master. Fairy Xianhua suddenly thought of something. Her voice trembled as she said, Sect Master, you said that the thunder-devouring bead contains thunder birth and destruction. Then our Imperial Thunder School's Thunder Pool. Ah? Yes, the Thunder Pool. Master Qian Lazy's smile froze on his face. He was even more surprised. Our Imperial Thunder School's Thunder Pool was created by our ancestor by imitating the thunder-devouring bead. However, Master Qian Lazy didn't finish his sentence. He looked around and said with a smile, This matter needs to be discussed carefully with our ancestor and the others. We can't confirm it for now. We were talking so happily that we actually forgot the biggest hero of our Imperial Thunder School. Of course, a few nascent soul stage cultivators and 2 gold core stage cultivators were talking here. Helplessness and Xiao Hua stood there respectfully. To be honest, they were really reserved. Moreover, these words faintly revealed many secrets of the Imperial Thunder School. Helplessness was only a late Foundation establishment stage disciple, and Xiao Hua was even worse. How could they dare to listen? The 2 of them almost covered their ears. Now that Master Qian Lazy changed the topic to them, their hearts relaxed. Helplessness straightened his back, and the smile on his face became even brighter. Xiao Hua, why don't you tell me everything that happened? After all, it was a lot of hard work. Master Qian Lazy's voice was gentle. Instead, he was more like an amiable old man. Xiao Hua's heart warmed. He bowed, and under the gazes of the 8 people, he told them how he met Qian Qinghua in the transportation formation of Liu Yang's Kai family. Afterwards, he was chased by Kai Hongfeng and met Qian Qinghua again. Afterwards, Qian Qinghua gave him the thunder-devouring bead. He was frightened and scared as he took the storage pouch, hid and searched, left Shihuang town, and then went to the Fu family, of course. Xiao Hua didn't know how many times he had thought about this story. There were 2 points that were hard to explain. One was that he took the thunder-devouring bead out of Shihuang town. The second was that he escaped from the hands of a Foundation establishment stage cultivator. However, Xiao Hua also understood that he was now a disciple of the Imperial Thunder School. The stronger he was, the better it would be for the Imperial Thunder School. Moreover, he brought back such an important item like the thunder-devouring bead to the Imperial Thunder School. The Imperial Thunder School wouldn't treat him lightly. Even if they had any doubts, he still did it. The Imperial Thunder School had no choice but to believe him. Sure enough, when they heard that Xiao Hua actually foolishly hid the storage pouch and then secretly took it out, the 8 people looked at each other in dismay. Fairy Xianhua even sighed. AI, you child, you've really suffered. That's right, a divine soul searching technique from a divine soul searching sect disciple could easily deal with him. To say that he used such a stupid method to escape was really difficult and lucky. When they heard that Xiao Hua actually escaped from the hands of 4 Foundation establishment stage cultivators, the 8 people remembered that this guy also met Qian Qinghua in Luoyang after escaping from the hands of Foundation establishment stage cultivators. Unconsciously, their faces showed joy. Chapter 1538. Actually, in the eyes of Master Qian Lazy and the other nascent soul cultivators, there wasn't much difference between Qi refining and Foundation establishment cultivators. Besides, Xiao Hua had always been able to hide his cultivation, so they didn't think it was too unreasonable. But when they heard that Xiao Hua had escaped from 4 cultivators with higher cultivation than him, Master Qian Lazy couldn't help but ask, Xiao Hua, can you fly very fast? Yes, Disciple has learned a nameless technique that can increase my flying speed, and Disciple is very good at flying. Xiao Hua knew that Qian Qinghua didn't die, and that Qian Qinghua had seen him fly, so he didn't hide it. Martial Uncle Qianhua also praised Disciple, saying that I was even faster than our sect's lightning escape technique. Xiao Hua's words were 80% true and 20% false. There were some strange things that he didn't hide, which successfully confused everyone. Qian Lazy laughed and said, That's good. Xiaohua, you should join my Qianlei Palace. My sect will find you the best gold core disciple to teach you the Thunder Escape technique as a reward for your contribution to my Imperial Thunder sect. Sect Master, Master Qian Lazy, couldn't take it anymore. He cupped his hands and said, Xiaohua has been accepted by our Thunder Palace as a disciple. You can't take away his love. Xiaohua had goosebumps all over his body. Martial ancestor, how can you say that? Oh, I forgot. Xiaohua is an official disciple who went through the disciple selection. Master Qian Lazy seemed to have just woken up and said apologetically, Oh right, Master Qian Lazy wants to negotiate with you. How about giving Xiaohua to our Heavenly Thunder Palace? He was saved by Qianhua, and he fulfilled Qianhua's wish. Wouldn't it be a wonderful thing for Qianhua to be his master? Qianhua? When Xiaohua thought of Qian Qinghua's boorish appearance, he felt gloomy and helpless. He wanted to say something, but didn't dare to refute, which made his face and neck red. Lei Tan's spiritual master looked at him helplessly, feeling somewhat disappointed. When Lei Tan's spiritual master spoke, Xiaohua bowed and said, Thank you for your kind intentions, sect master. Disciple didn't enter the eyes of martial uncles during the disciple selection. It was master who chose disciple at first glance. How can disciple hurt master's heart? That's, helplessly muttered. I've been working so hard to guard the 10,000 Thunder Valley. Why didn't Jin Lei Palace inform me that they were going to select disciples? Although their voices were soft, what kind of cultivation did they have? How could he not understand? Zhen Sheng's expression changed slightly, and he stole a glance at Qian Lazy. However, Qian Lazy acted as if he didn't hear Zhen Sheng and laughed. Xiaohua, you really are a loyal person. It seems like Qinghua was really lucky to meet you that day. Forget it. Xiaohua, you can be Helplessly's disciple. This is Jin Lei Palace's disciple selection rules. It's not good for me to interfere. Master Qian Lazy waved his hand. However, you've made such a great contribution to our Imperial Thunder sect even before joining us. Our Imperial Thunder sect has always been fair in its rewards and punishments. Tell us, and we'll consider it. Red Cloud's Ascension Technique. Xiaohua shouted these 6 words in his heart almost without thinking. Of course, this was only Xiaohua's wishful thinking. After thinking for a while, Xiaohua really didn't have anything he wanted. He was already a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. He could get anything he wanted in the 10,000 Thunder Valley. What's the difference between now and later? Reporting to Sect Master. Disciple used to be a loose cultivator. Now that I can become a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect, I am already overjoyed. I don't lack any cultivation methods or medicinal pills. Disciple has thought for a long time, but I can't think of anything I want. You child, Fairy Xianhua, smiled kindly. It's rare for the sect master to be so generous. Why don't you think about it more? How about this, sect master? Give Xiaohua some more medicinal pills. In addition, the mental cultivation method of the Heavenly Thunder Palace. That won't do either. Helplessly was a disciple of the Heavenly Thunder Palace. Although Xiaohua could be bestowed with a special cultivation method of the Heavenly Thunder Palace, Helplessly couldn't do that. Reporting to Sect Master, the medicinal power of the clear flower pill in Disciples' Meridians is enough for me to reach the foundation establishment stage. Let's talk about this later. Xiaohua cupped his hands and said. However, his heart suddenly moved. He rolled his eyes and said, If Sect Master is kind enough, Disciple would like to. Could you give Disciple a chance to read more cultivation methods? When Disciple was a loose cultivator, Disciple longed for cultivation methods for a long time. You child, what is this? Fairy Xianhua seemed to like Xiaohua very much. She laughed and scolded. What kind of gift is this? Every disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect has their own cultivation method pavilion in each Lightning Palace. As long as your cultivation is sufficient, you can naturally go to the cultivation method pavilion to find a suitable cultivation method for you. Qian Lazy thought for a moment, then slapped his hand and took out a token from his storage bag. He struck it with a spell. After a flash of light, he waved his hand, and the token flew in front of Xiao Hua, saying, Xiao Hua, take this token. With this token, you can study all the cultivation methods of the cultivation method pavilions of the Imperial Thunder Sect's 8 great lightning palaces. Xiao Hua was overjoyed, but his face was full of shock. Sect Master, isn't this inappropriate? Yes, Sect Master, I'm afraid this method will do more harm than good, right? Lei Mingzhenren also tried to stop him. This Sect Master knows. Qianlei Zi waved his hand and said, however, except for the ancient books of the Thunder Palace, you can only study the cultivation methods of the other lightning palaces by yourself. In addition, Lei Ming and Xiao Hua's spirit stones and elixirs will be double the standard of ordinary disciples. This shouldn't be difficult, right? Qianlei Zi said again. Of course. Lei Mingzhenren nodded. In addition, the chores of the Thunder Palace. Xiao Hua can choose from them. Don't make it difficult for him. Yes, disciple understands. Well, Xiao Hua, take this token. You have made great contributions to the sect, so these rewards are still too light. If you have any requests in the future, you can ask Lei Ming. Disciple is afraid. Xiao Hua took the token and said very respectfully, of course, you are now a low-level disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. This is the most important thing you should remember. Don't let your previous contributions drag down your cultivation and make you slack off. Qianlei Zi warned again. Yes, disciple understands. Thank you for your warning, Sect Master. Xiao Hua bowed. You have worked hard to guard the myriad Thunder Valley and made great contributions to the Imperial Thunder Sect. How can I not know if others don't know? Qianlei Zi said to Xiao Hua in a pleasant tone. You must have thought about the Thunder Escape art for a long time. I will allow Xiao Hua to copy it, and you will teach him. Yes, disciple understands. Disciple is very grateful. Xiao Hua's face was filled with joy and blush. He quickly bowed and thanked Qianlei Zi. Well, you can leave now. Qianlei Zi waved his hand and said with a smile. Yes, disciple will leave now. Xiao Hua and Xiao Hua bowed and left. After the two of them left, Qianlei Zi smiled and said to Jin Sheng, Jin Sheng, you have made a great contribution this time. I will remember it in my heart. Jin Sheng quickly said, Disciple is just making a suggestion. Xiao Hua has worked hard, and we don't know where Qing Hua is right now. Disciple can't say that I have made any contribution. Don't tell me that your martial uncle Xian Hua is afraid that you don't understand. Thank you, martial uncle and sect master. Disciple just felt uncomfortable when he saw how arrogant the Shanghua sect was. Jinshen quickly explained, well, let's not talk about this for now. I think that once the thunder-devouring bead appears, the Shanghua sect and the other two sects will definitely relax their attention on the Imperial Thunder sect and the Western Huang Town. Of course, for the next 10 years, we don't have to pay too much attention to Shihuang Town. We even have to release a little bit of news about Qing Hua's return. Qing Hua will need at least 10 years to recuperate. Even if this sect head were to find Qing Hua now, we wouldn't be able to wake him up. Otherwise, Qing Hua's efforts over the past 2 years would be for naught, or even worse. Disciple understands. Jin Sheng nodded and said, the soul oblivion art is a taboo. However, Disciple will occasionally send disciples to the Western Huang Town. If there is an opportunity, well, since you know how powerful it is, go and do it. Qianlei Zi said with a smile. Also, how is the recruitment of disciples this year? Sect Master, this year we recruited a total of 94 disciples. 73 of them have found a master, and 21 of them have been accepted into Zhenlei Palace. They will be taught by the technique imparting disciples. Why are there still 94 disciples? Are there even zeros? Can't we just recruit 100 disciples? Reverend me, you said with a smile. Yes, Martial Uncle knows. Previously, we also decided on 100 disciples. Who would have thought? Dui Jie, who was standing at the side, said with a smile. This Xiao Hua is really interesting. He is really a rogue cultivator. He doesn't have the temperament and skill of a disciple of a cultivation family. Fairy Xianhua laughed. Xiaohua is naturally a rogue cultivator. When Disciple went to the Thunder Cave last time, I saw him. He seemed to be going through the Heaven Forsakens test and wanted to join the Heaven Forsaken sect. Lei Meng explained his encounter with Xiaohua. This Xiaohua seems to be fated with my Imperial Thunder sect. Qian Leizi said with a smile. I guess you didn't expect him to be your disciple that day, right? Of course. His cultivation is too shallow. Disciple just said a few words to encourage him. Do you really want to accept a rogue cultivator as your disciple? Reverend Lei Meng nodded. Rogue cultivators can't be underestimated. They are just scattered sand. If there's a plate to gather them together, they will be a very strong force. Qian Leizi said again, that cultivator who organized the Heaven Forsaken sect is also a person with foresight. Sect Master, don't worry. 2 years ago, Disciple heard that the founder of the Heaven Forsaken sect had disappeared. The Heaven Forsaken sect only exists in name. I guess it has already been forgotten by others. Reverend Lei Meng said with a smile. Chapter 1539. In Jin Sheng, Dui Jie, you have worked hard in selecting disciples. Go and rest. Qian Leizi waved his hand and said, Yes, we will leave now. Jin Sheng and Dui Jie bowed and left. After the two left the Great Thunder Hall, Qian Leizi looked at the 5 people beside him and said in a low voice, What Xianhua said is very reasonable. Our Imperial Thunder Sect's lightning pool is made with the thunder-devouring bead as the prototype. However, this lightning pool is a fake after all. Even though it can simulate the birth and death of lightning, it is not something made by nature and cannot adjust itself. It cannot adapt to any slight changes in the heavenly lightning. Now that we have the real lightning-devouring bead, we can make use of it. Firstly, we can use the lightning water from the lightning pool to nourish the lightning-devouring bead and accelerate its maturity. Secondly, we can use the lightning-devouring bead to deal with the changes in the heavenly lightning. Sectmaster is right. Fairy Xianhua nodded. I also feel that the lightning pool and the thunder-devouring bead complement each other. More importantly, we can clearly see the birth and destruction of lightning of the thunder-devouring bead. It will be more beneficial for Sect Master to comprehend the thunder amplification method. Of course, I also need the help of martial uncles. Don't make any mistakes, Qian Leizi said solemnly. Leaving aside the fact that Master Qian Leizi and the others were discussing the Imperial Lightning sex matters in the Great Thunder Hall, Xiaohua had also followed Helpless out of the Great Thunder Hall. Helpless didn't say anything else as he used the lightning escape technique to fly out of the Thunder Immortal Peak. Along the way, Helplessness bowed his head and didn't say anything. When Xiaohua saw this, he didn't dare to say anything. After flying for a long time, he saw that there weren't any Imperial Thunder Sect disciples flying around. He helplessly landed. Xiaohua didn't understand. He thought it was the 10,000 Thunder Valley. However, after looking around, it didn't seem like anyone lived there. He also couldn't see anything important. Only then did he look at Helplessness. At this time, Helplessness was also looking at Xiaohua. Helplessness frowned and said, Xiaohua, do you really want to be my disciple? Xiaohua saw this and said very respectfully, If disciple isn't sincere, why would I refuse in front of Sect Master? And since you think of me as your master, then Master will also think of you as my disciple. There are some things I need to make clear to you. Helplessness said very seriously. Xiaohua's heart trembled as he nodded his head like a chick pecking at rice. Xiaohua, do you think it's better to be in the limelight in the Imperial Thunder Sect and shine all day long? Or is it better to remain unknown and improve my cultivation? Xiaohua's heart relaxed, and a warm current flowed through him. He said with a smile, Look at what Master said. It's naturally good to raise my cultivation. Then do you think you've made a great contribution to the Imperial Thunder Sect? All I did was bring the thunder-devouring bead back. The one who really contributed was Martial Uncle Qinghua. Xiaohua shook his head. What's Senior Uncle Qinghua? Remember to call him Senior Uncle Qinghua. He helplessly spat out a mouthful of saliva and said, "If this old man wasn't guarding the 10,000 Thunder Valley, I would definitely be able to do something like this." He scratched his chin and said, "Well, since you know that the credit belongs to your uncle Master Qinghua, that's good. You can return the token that the sect leader gave you, but..." Xiao Huan naturally didn't understand. What? What does that have to do with anything? Alas, didn't this old man say it in the Spring Thunder Palace? As a loose cultivator, you've already practiced many kinds of techniques when you were refining qi, creating an insurmountable bottleneck for your future cultivation. Now it seems that with your hidden flame physique, you might be able to break through this bottleneck and step into the Foundation Establishment realm. But after you enter the Foundation Establishment realm, you mustn't repeat the same mistake and practice many kinds of techniques. With this token in your hand, how can you resist the temptation of those techniques? Moreover, you're always wandering around other people's technique inheritance pavilions. What kind of scandal is that? How can you not attract the attention of others? Since you've attracted the attention of others, there will naturally be people who will investigate your token. How can anyone not know about your matters? Can you still cultivate peacefully? Xiao Hua understood. He knew that Qinghua's worries were very reasonable. However, he was really afraid of being poor. He didn't want to live without techniques anymore. Besides, if he wanted to exchange something that was already in his hand back, then wouldn't it be harder than ascending to the heavens? All right, Master knows. This disciple also thought about it at that time. Xiao Hua explained, "Firstly, this disciple feels that although the techniques of the Imperial Thunder Sect are different from the Lightning Palace, after all, they're all branches, right? Their basic techniques should be the same, right? Secondly, this disciple only wants to look at some techniques and practice some opposing divine abilities. Alas, raising one's cultivation is fundamental. The so-called techniques and divine abilities are all insignificant Daos." Qinghua sighed helplessly. "However, what you said is also reasonable. The cultivation techniques of the Dawn Rain continent are extremely lacking. The techniques of my Imperial Thunder Sect are also comprehended by the ancestors. They're only related to the physique of the cultivator. Their fundamentals are indeed similar. Moreover, if this disciple returns the token, then how will Master's lightning evasion technique reach perfection?" Xiao Hua took the opportunity to say again, "Oh, isn't that so?" Qinghua suddenly realized. The Heavenly Thunder Palace's lightning evasion technique is the most complete. This old man has long coveted it. Master doesn't covet other techniques? Left and right, they're all Imperial Thunder Sect's techniques. This disciple can also report to Sect Master and see if there's anything he can reveal. Xiao Hua said in a low voice again, "Nonsense. Sect Master has already warned you. You must not provoke Sect Master." Qinghua scolded with a smile on his face. All right, just take it as this disciple didn't say anything," Xiao Hua said with a smile. Hee, you're actually quite interesting. You're much better than your eldest senior brother." Seeing Xiao Hua's mischievous smile, Qinghua didn't get angry. What's wrong with eldest senior brother? Xiao Hua seemed to have thought of Gong Mingwei. You'll know when you go to the Myriad Thunder Valley." Qinghua didn't want to talk about this eldest senior brother anymore. Master, this disciple forgot. Martial Uncle Qinghua. Martial Uncle gave this disciple a token. This disciple didn't take it out just now. Xiao Hua suddenly remembered and exclaimed. Qinghua thought for a moment and said, "Forget it. Don't go today. Wait for a chance in the future." From the looks of it, Sect Master and Martial Ancestor might be discussing the lightning devouring bead. Won't you be disturbing them if you go? This disciple understands. Xiao Hua nodded. "Let's go. We'll go to the Myriad Thunder Valley today. You can also get to know the sect first. It'll be convenient for you when you come back in the future." Qinghua waved his hand and said, Master, what do you mean? Don't I live in the Myriad Thunder Valley?" Xiao Hua was surprised. Of course you don't live in the Myriad Thunder Valley." Qinghua waved his hand helplessly and brought Xiao Hua along. They rushed to the Myriad Thunder Valley, while explaining to Xiao Hua. It turned out that in the Imperial Thunder Sect, all cultivators below the foundation establishment stage lived in the Zhenlei Palace and the Conversion Thunder Palace to cultivate. Xiaohua, for example, usually stayed in the Conversion Thunder Palace and did some chores for the Imperial Thunder Sect in exchange for spirit stones and medicinal pills. Only when they encountered difficulties in cultivation or at fixed times would they have the opportunity to go to the Myriad Thunder Valley to receive guidance. Of course, the Conversion Thunder Palace also had its own specialized disciples who could accept Xiaohua's inquiries. As for talisman crafting and alchemy, every Thunder Palace in the Imperial Thunder Sect had a special quiet room. One only needed to pay a certain amount of spirit stones to use it. Of course, the spiritual herbs and other materials used for alchemy were all provided by the Imperial Thunder Sect. The Imperial Thunder Sect could also provide the basic yellow talismans for alchemy. Haha, it's really great to have a sect. Xiaohua almost jumped up in the air. He was still thinking about finding a place with earth fire to refine pills, but now the Imperial Thunder Sect had a special alchemy room with a special earth fire. As long as you take out spirit stones, it'll be fine. It was really convenient. All right, Xiaohua. Every disciple has something to do in the Imperial Thunder Sect. You aura refining disciples naturally don't have to do important things. You're basically just doing chores. You have to think about it carefully. Qinghua exhorted helplessly. However, the sect master said that you can choose any chores in the shocking Thunder Palace. Huh? Master, don't I live in the Zhenlei Palace? I should be at chores in the Zhenlei Palace, right? Xiaohua reminded. How many aura refining disciples are there in the Zhenlei Palace? How many chores do they have to do? You usually live in the Zhenlei Palace, but you still have to do chores in the shocking Thunder Palace. Qinghua explained helplessly. You're a disciple of the shocking Thunder Palace, so you naturally have to do things for the shocking Thunder Palace. Xiaohua understood. After thinking for a while, he asked, does the shocking Thunder Palace have a medicinal garden? Yes, every lightning palace has one. Qinghua nodded helplessly, but then he asked, could it be that you want to plant spiritual herbs? That's a hard and tiring job. Not many disciples are willing to do it. In my opinion, you should go refine yellow talismans. That's a place that all aura refining disciples like to go. On one hand, you can improve and control your magic power. On the other hand, you can practice many magic arts, which will be very useful after you build your foundation. Oh, I reckon that Grandmaster Lei Meng also has the same idea. Seeing that Qinghua actually used Lei Meng Daoist to persuade him, Xiaohua became even more excited. He smiled and said, I have my own plans. I've been refining talismans in the Fu clan for a long time and have learned a lot. I want to change my tastes. Moreover, no one goes to the medicinal garden, so it's quiet and convenient for cultivation. Besides, it's double the amount of medicinal pills and spirit stones anyway, so I won't lose out anywhere. These are all small paths. You can choose as you wish. I'm just reminding you. Refining talismans can indeed improve your cultivation, but repeating the same thing every day isn't very interesting, and you don't have much time. The medicinal garden is indeed tiring, but once you're done with it, you'll have your own time. It's really beneficial for cultivation. Qinghua said helplessly. All right, we'll enter the Myriad Thunder Valley in front of us, which is where my Immortal's Cave is located. You should be careful. Although the Myriad Thunder Valley is still far away, the thunder from the Myriad Thunder Valley can hurt people. Qinghua waved his hand and sent out a scarlet summoning talisman, reminding Xiaohua. Yes, I understand. Xiaohua nodded, but just as he nodded, his heart suddenly jumped. It was as if someone had inexplicably hit him with a stick. Chapter 1540. Xiaohua was startled, but before he could ask, his heart started beating rapidly again. It was very sudden, causing Xiaohua's blood to rush up, making him feel extremely uncomfortable. Immediately after, the beating disappeared without a trace. Master, Xiaohua did not dare to be careless and quickly asked, is it possible that the sound of thunder is not only heard in the ears? It is also possible to hit the heart? Yes. Helplessness nodded slightly. The threat of the 10,000 Thunder Valley is not only the sound of thunder. The most powerful thing is the soundless. Xiaohua, did you comprehend it yourself? Or did you hear it from here? Helplessness said and stopped the lightning escape in shock. Xiaohua smiled bitterly, raised his hand, and touched his chest, saying, "How could Disciple have such high aptitude?" Just now, when Master finished speaking, Disciple felt it in his heart. Really? Helplessness not only did not have a worried expression, but instead, he was very surprised. Xiaohua was puzzled. Helplessness looked like a master who did not care about his disciple. Of course it's true. Xiaohua described the rhythm and helplessness of the previous few times. This. Helplessness looked up and down at Xiaohua. The joy in his eyes was very obvious. Seems like it's a good thing. Xiaohua somewhat understood. Xiaohua, you obviously do not have a thunder attribute body. Martial Uncle Jinxing's test should not be wrong. But how could you feel the soundless thunder of the 10,000 Thunder Valley from such a distance? Helplessness said and clapped his hands. Even if a disciple with a thunder attribute, it is impossible to feel the soundless thunder here. This range was set by the senior martial ancestor. Master also did not feel anything here. Master, it's here again. Xiaohua held his hand on his chest and said. Helplessness naturally had to feel it. After a while, he smiled helplessly. Xiaohua, seems like you are indeed the hope of my 10,000 Thunder Valley. Xiaohua suddenly felt an invisible weight on his shoulder. He curled his lips and smiled apologetically. Disciple only has sensitive senses. It's not that serious, right? This is not just a matter of sensitive senses. Helplessly suppressing his joy, he said somewhat incoherently, "My Imperial Lightning Sex cultivation method has always focused on the lightning attribute physique. The fire attribute physique is only a secondary cultivation method. It is far inferior to the lightning attribute. You're able to sense the soundless thunder in the myriad Thunder Valley from here, which only shows that you're very sensitive to the thunder in the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. If you cultivate the thunder attribute cultivation technique of my Thunderous Thunder Palace, you'll definitely be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort and break through to the foundation establishment realm in the shortest amount of time." This time, Qinxinghua can't laugh at my disciples for being slow. Master, Uncle Master Qinghua, even if he wants to laugh at you now, he won't be able to. Xiaohua was speechless. He didn't know why Qinxinghua didn't get along with his master, but he still remembered some of Qinxinghua's words. This bastard, he better come back quickly. Let this bastard be envious of this old man. He helplessly snorted and said, "In the past, he often talked about your eldest senior brother." "Oh, speak of your eldest senior brother, and your eldest senior brother is here. That guy, he's so quick with this. When he was cultivating, why didn't I see any improvement?" While speaking helplessly, his eyes looked into the distance. Xiaohua looked and released his perception, but he couldn't find any trace of Qinxinghua. He couldn't help but be shocked. At this moment, there was a loud rumble. Xiaohua's perception was struck by the silent lightning of the myriad Thunder Valley. Xiaohua's entire body seemed to have sunk into the thunder waves. Xiaohua was shocked. He had already sensed Xiaohua's abnormality and hurriedly waved his hand. A seal was placed around Xiaohua. Xiaohua let out a long breath. The thunder just now was like a shocking wave that drowned him. Xiaohua wanted to escape from the wave, but he couldn't do anything. The helpless restriction was like a barrier, instantly rescuing him from the sea of lightning. Master was careless. Xiaohua said regretfully, "Master didn't expect you to be so sensitive to the sound of thunder. I still wanted to teach you the lightning avoidance technique in the future." Lightning avoidance technique? Xiaohua was stunned. It's nothing. It's just a cultivation technique that can reduce the damage caused by the silent and loud thunder. Xiaohua said in a low voice. "Let's go. We'll talk after we retreat. Let's see if you can comprehend it in a short time. If you can't, you should return to Jin Lei Palace tonight." Helpless, He cherished this disciple very much. With a wave of his hand, he brought Xiao Hua and flew several li away before stopping. Yes, disciple will try to comprehend it now. Xiao Hua nodded and sat down cross-legged. He silently chanted the lightning avoidance technique in his heart and began to comprehend it. Xiao Hua didn't impart many cultivation techniques, but every word was a gem. It was rather difficult to pronounce. But who was Xiao Hua? What heavenly laws embodiment technique? What stealing the heavens? What heavenly laws embodiment technique? All of these cultivation techniques were comprehended by himself. Master never said a word. Therefore, although this cultivation technique was obscure and difficult to understand, under Xiao Hua's comprehension, he gradually comprehended it. Good. No wonder martial ancestor Lei Ming could enter the thunder accumulation cave. If I also had this cultivation technique at that time, there would be no harm in entering. After Xiao Hua had some comprehension, he secretly praised the Imperial Thunder Sect's cultivation technique in his heart. At this moment, Xiao Hua's heart stirred and he opened his eyes. The sky was already bright. Several zhang in front of him, Xiao Hua was looking at the rising sun in the east with his hands clasped behind his back. Next to him was a short cultivator, probably at the early stage of foundation establishment. He had his back to Xiao Hua and was respectfully accompanying Xiao Hua. Eldest martial brother? His heart stirred and he stopped comprehending. He was about to stand up. Although Xiao Hua was looking to the east, he had been paying attention to Xiao Hua. At this moment, he immediately smiled and said, Xiao Hua, how much have you comprehended? Master, this lightning avoidance technique is very profound. I'm afraid disciple can only comprehend 20% of it. Xiao Hua didn't hide it and said with a smile, 20%? Xiao Hua was shocked again. At this moment, the eldest martial brother next to Xiao Hua also turned his head and looked at Xiao Hua with a smile. When Xiao Hua saw the eldest martial brother's appearance, he couldn't help but stare blankly. The person who turned his head was wearing a clean Taoist robe, but his stature was shorter than Xiao Hua's by half a head. What puzzled Xiao Hua the most was that this senior martial brother had a lot of wrinkles on his face. His hair was gray and he had a bitter expression. He looked much older than Xiao Hua. In the eyes of ordinary people, this eldest martial brother was the master, and Xiao Hua was the eldest martial brother's disciple. Although Xiao Hua also knew that cultivators couldn't be judged by their appearance, but this eldest martial brother, whose name he didn't know, was far from what he imagined. Right? Xiao Hua's astonishment fell into the eldest martial brother's eyes, but he didn't show any dissatisfaction. He only nodded slightly and didn't say half a word. It was as if as long as Xiao Hua was here, he would absolutely listen to Xiao Hua's arrangements and absolutely wouldn't overstep his boundaries. Xiao Hua, are you sure you can comprehend 20%? Xiao Hua asked again. Xiao Hua scratched his head. This technique was indeed marvelous. In fact, Xiao Hua had already comprehended 40% of it. But seeing Xiao Hua so shocked, he could only smile apologetically and say, Disciple, probably only comprehended 15%? It's just that I'm afraid Master will be disappointed. So I said 20%. You brat. Xiao Hua scolded with a smile. This is the secret inheritance of my Imperial Thunder Sect's 10,000 Thunder Valley. Only Foundation Establishment cultivators can comprehend it. Master telling you this can also be considered a test. Even if you can only comprehend 5%, Master will still be gratified. How can I be disappointed? Congratulations, Master. You've accepted such a cute and clever little disciple. The eldest martial brother beside him smiled apologetically and said. Xiao Hua frowned, a trace of helplessness in his eyes. He pointed with his finger and said, That's right, this is your eldest martial brother, Xiang Yang. You've seen him before, right? If you had 20% of your eldest martial brother's steadiness, Master wouldn't be so worried. Master, look at what you're saying. Eldest martial brother is steadiness. That's how eldest martial brother should be. If disciple is steadiness, what would eldest martial brother do? Xiao Hua said as he stepped forward and bowed deeply. Disciple Xiao Hua greets eldest martial brother. Quickly get up, quickly get up. Xiangyang had a pure smile on his face. He hurriedly stepped forward and pulled Xiao Hua, not letting him kneel down. He said, "That year, I used half a year's time to comprehend the lightning avoidance technique." Little Marshall brother was able to comprehend 15% in just one night. It really makes me blush with shame. Half a year? That can't be right. Xiao Hua secretly sighed in his heart, but he had a sudden realization in his heart. Looking at eldest Marshall brother's aptitude, it's a bit lacking. Seeing how old he looks, he's probably not young. He's still in the early stage of foundation establishment. No wonder Master didn't want to mention him. You still have a nerve to say that. A simple lightning avoidance technique, and you used half a year's time to comprehend it. You're still a foundation establishment cultivator. I don't even feel like talking to you. Xiao Hua scolded helplessly. He. Xianyang only laughed foolishly, not answering. Master, that means eldest Marshall brother, is also a foundation establishment cultivator. Disciple even dreams of foundation establishment. That's right, disciple. Should I call eldest Marshall brother senior? Xiao Hua said with a smile. Please don't. Xianyang was somewhat panicked. He repeatedly waved his hand and said, although all the aura-refining disciples in my Imperial Thunder School have to call Foundation Establishment Cultivators Senior, you and I have the same master. You can only call him Senior Marshall Brother. What are you so anxious for? You're only 25 years old. Not to mention Foundation Establishment, the medicinal efficacy of the brilliant flower pill in your body is enough to raise your cultivation to Foundation Establishment. Xiao Hua scolded helplessly. Right now, your main task is to comprehend and quickly raise your mental state and Tao heart. This is what you individual cultivators lack the most. What? Youngest Marshall brother is also an individual cultivator? And just 25 years old? Xianyang couldn't help but ask. Yes, this junior Marshall brother of yours is also an individual cultivator. He's about the same as you. Xiao Hua snorted helplessly and said, however, he has the concealed fire constitution. Damn it, why did I only take in individual cultivators? Hearing that Xiao Hua was an individual cultivator, Xiangyang's eyes once again revealed a bit of warmth. He said, before I joined the Imperial Thunder School, my family declined, and I became an individual cultivator. It just so happened that the Imperial Thunder School was recruiting disciples. I was lucky enough to pass, but no one was willing to accept me. Only Master was kind. Chapter 1541. That numb feeling actually followed the juice of the green thunder fruit into Xiao Hua's body. Xiao Hua already had some experience, and knew that this was the unique reaction of the rare lightning-attributed spiritual energy of heaven and earth. He immediately used his cultivation method to refine the spiritual energy in his meridians. Only after 3 cycles did the numb feeling completely disappear. The moment the numbness disappeared, a comfortable feeling arose in his entire body. Xiao Hua's face revealed a kind of enjoyment. He opened his eyes and saw Wu Xian's concerned gaze. Seeing Xiao Hua look over, Wu Xian hurriedly asked, how is it? Has the spiritual energy in the green thunder fruit been refined? Xiao Hua was a bit puzzled, but he still answered honestly, Master, after 3 cycles of refinement, it has been refined. Good. Wu Xian's face revealed a happy expression. He clapped his hands and smiled. He picked up the cold spiritual tea and drank it all. Eldest senior brother? Xiao Hua turned to Xiangyang for help. Oh, Master is testing you again. Xiangyang smiled and said, this green thunder fruit contains the unique lightning-attributed spiritual energy of heaven and earth from my Imperial Thunder sect. This thing is very domineering. Ordinary physiques cannot refine it. Only those with lightning-attributed and fire-attributed physiques can absorb it. Little junior brother did not use my Imperial Thunder sect's cultivation method and was able to refine it within 3 cycles. Not only does it show that little junior brother's physique is suitable for practicing the Imperial Thunder Sect cultivation method, it also shows that little junior brother's current cultivation method is also very good. Yes, Xiaohua, you're a loose cultivator. I heard you said that you practiced 3 kinds of cultivation methods. What kind of cultivation method are you practicing now? Wu Xian was in a good mood. Yin Qinglian poured 3 cups of spiritual tea for him, then put down the teacup and asked with a smile. Disciple is practicing heavenly law embodiment technique. Xiaohua clapped his hands and took out a booklet from his storage pouch and handed it over. Oh, Wu Xian looked at the booklet in Xiaohua's hand and felt a bit strange. She said in a low voice, Master should have some impression of any cultivation method that has some reputation in Shi. Why don't I have any impression of this heavenly law embodiment technique? Wu Xian was not polite. He picked up the heavenly law embodiment technique and carefully read it. Little junior brother, this spiritual tea is good to drink when it is hot. It will have no effect when it is cold. Xiangyang said as he pointed to the teacup. Thank you, senior brother. Xiaohua picked up the teacup, and a refreshing aroma rushed into his nose. When he finished the spirit tea in one gulp, a refreshing spirit energy also rushed into his meridians. Alas, regardless of whether it's the fruits or the spirit tea, they all contain the world's spirit energy. In this kind of situation, even if you don't want to cultivate faster, it's impossible. Xiaohua sighed with emotion. Yin Qinglian walked over and filled Xiaohua's cup to the brim. She smiled and said, although the taste of this spiritual tea is not bad, its spiritual energy is still not enough. In a while, little junior Marshall brother, come to our abode and have a seat. Senior Marshall's sister will invite you to taste the spiritual wine brewed by Senior Marshall's sister. Spirit wine? When Xiaohua heard this, he frowned slightly. It seemed that he didn't like drinking wine at all. What? Little junior brother doesn't like wine? Xiangyang asked curiously. Although your Shizao's wine isn't as good as Shermu's, it's better in terms of quantity. You can drink as much as you want when you go. Xiaohua smiled apologetically and said, eldest Marshall brother and Marshall sister are inviting little brother to drink. Little brother is naturally happy. It's just that little brother didn't expect eldest Marshall brother and Marshall sister to have another abode. Hee, in my Imperial Thunder Sect, cultivators before the Foundation Establishment stage all live in the Zhenlei Palace and the converted Lei Palace. Only after reaching the Foundation Establishment stage are they qualified to have their own cave abodes. Normally, for the convenience of cultivation, they would open a cave abode near their master's cave abode. My abode is not far from master's, so it's like this. Xiaohua looked around and asked in a low voice, when cultivating, one needs a place with abundant world spirit energy. My Imperial Thunder Sect's Mount Lama already has abundant world spirit energy. I didn't expect Master's abode to have more. He, little junior brother, doesn't need to worry about this. In my Imperial Thunder Sect's Xiong Peak, there's a Qi Chao Pavilion that specializes in raising spirit-seeking mice. Once little junior brother reaches Foundation Establishment, you'll have the qualifications to open your own abode. As long as you get a token from Zhenlei Palace and a spirit-seeking mouse from Qi Chao Pavilion, that little thing will naturally help you find a place with abundant world spirit energy. Xiangyang said with a smile. Ah, spirit-seeking mouse? Xiaohua stared blankly and immediately thought of the spirit-seeking mouse in his space. He whispered that that's a third-ranked spirit beast comparable to Foundation Establishment. Xiangyang smiled and waved his hand, saying, little junior brother's talking about the wild ones outside. Our Imperial Thunder Sect's spirit-seeking mouse is domesticated and can only search for world spirit energy. It can't even be considered a first-ranked spirit beast. Oh, so it's like that. Xiaohua nodded, picked up the teacup, and slowly tasted it. Seeing this, Xiangyang didn't say anything and just silently accompanied him to drink tea. Xiaohua wasn't drinking tea. He had already entered his space. His space was also strange. For spirit herbs and other things one day was already many years in the outside world. But for spirit beasts, it was far from having this kind of effect. One day was just one day, and it even seemed like it wasn't even one day. Therefore, although the spirit-seeking mouse's baby, the ice worm king's egg, and the water-pattern butterfly's 2 eggs also had changes, they were far from the changes of the spirit herbs. Looking at the rainbow epiphyllums, several zhang long rainbow brilliance, as well as the worm eggs that were several times bigger than before, Xiaohua slightly shook his head and looked at the baby mouse. After 2 years of growth, the baby mouse's length had changed a bit. The fur on its body had also grown, and it was snow white. It was very cute. However, the baby mouse still had its eyes closed. Even if it often rolled around, it still didn't open its eyes. However, it was also strange. No matter how the baby mouse rolled, it didn't leave the vicinity of Tianzhong. Xiaohua was worried that it would harm the spirit herbs, but it never happened. Mother, when Xiaohua's mind entered the space, Goldie sensed it. Its eyes slightly rolled as it shouted in its heart. Goldie, Mother asks you, do you think it's faster to stay here, or is it faster to stay outside? Xiaohua also said in his heart, of course it's faster to stay outside. Goldie said without hesitation, it's always daytime here. Outside, it's going to be night soon. Xiaohua snickered in his heart. He knew that Goldie would not be able to tell. At this moment, a dark cloud suddenly appeared above the reverse light. The dark cloud drifted in the air, and occasionally, lightning would flash out from the dark cloud. This space of mine, when did it have lightning? Xiaohua was surprised, but then he realized the lightning in the thunder-devouring bead is probably because I took the thunder-devouring bead into the space, and the space changed again. It's a pity that there's only lightning and no rain. Xiaohua, just as Xiaohua was imagining things in the space, he helplessly called out. Master, Xiaohua withdrew from his space and said, this cultivation method, is there a problem? Helplessly, he threw the heavenly law embodiment technique to Xiaohua and shook his head. This cultivation method is very strange. It seems to be different from the ordinary cultivation methods in the country of Xi. It's somewhat biased toward body cultivation. However, according to Master's vision, using this cultivation method, you'll definitely be able to build your foundation. All right, which level of Qi refining did you start cultivating from? Late 4th level of Qi refining. Xiaohua replied. Alas, it's still a pity. Helplessly, he said, if you started cultivating from the 1st level of Qi refining, Master wouldn't have to worry about your foundation. Xiaohua smiled bitterly and didn't say much. This had already happened, and it was useless to talk about it. Master originally wanted to take a look at your cultivation method. If it wasn't good, I would have taught you the Imperial Thunder Sect's Qi refining cultivation method. Since your cultivation method isn't bad, you should cultivate this first. If you rashly change to another one, it might be inappropriate. Helplessly, he still said, however, Master always feels that this cultivation method is a bit strange. As for why it's strange, Master can't tell. The key point is that you can cultivate to the late 10th level of Qi refining with this cultivation method, which makes me feel that my suspicions are groundless. Okay, I'll follow Master's instructions. Xiaohua put away the cultivation method and laughed. In addition, your Master's wife just said that she wanted to give you a magic tool, but Master stopped her. Helplessly, he said again, Master feels that since you just started Qi refining and can't control magic tools, it's better to give it to you after you build your foundation. Thank you, Master's wife. Thank you, Master. Xiaohua said with a smile. Disciple will stay in the Imperial Thunder Sect. I'm not afraid of any magic tools from the Imperial Thunder Sect. Alas. Helplessly sighing, Zhuo Minghui looked at Xiang Yang and the others and said with a smile, the Imperial Thunder Sect isn't a paradise. Wherever there are people, there will be fighting. Xiaohua scratched his head. Zhuo Minghui's words were very profound, and he couldn't think of the meaning behind them for a while. His eyes turned, and he asked then, Master, do you have any more common methods to refine magic tools? If you do, there's no harm in giving Disciple 1 or 2 first. 1 or 2. Helplessly, he waved his hand again and again. You're only in the 10th level of Qi refining. This method to refine magic tools can only be used by foundation building cultivators. What do you want them for? Wait until you build your foundation in the future. Xiao Hua didn't say much. He had Qian Lei Zi's command medallion, and this method to refine magic tools wasn't particularly precious. He could just wait until later to find it. All right, Xiao Hua. Master still has things to do in the Myriad Thunder Valley, so I won't keep you. You can go out with your eldest senior brother. Helplessly, he waved his hand and said to Xiang Yang, take Xiao Hua to the Jade Archive Hall to register. Pay respects to the founder, see where he lives, and then come back. All right, Xiao Hua's foundation building cultivation. When you have nothing to do, go take a look. Although that disciple teaches, how can he know as much as you? Moreover, if you don't take out your 50 years of foundation building experience now, when will you take it out? Yes, disciple understands. Xiang Yang stood up and said, Xiao Hua, since you know where your master's cave is, come over when you have time. Although there are many people in Jian Lei Palace, it's different from your eldest senior brother and the others. Since you're new here, you should get closer to your eldest senior brother. If there's anything you don't understand, just ask him. Zhuo Minghui exhorted. Yes, disciple understands. Disciple will definitely come whenever he has time. However, disciple must drink some of the wine master's wife brewed. Xiao Hua said with a smile, still not getting lost. Helplessly, he scolded from the side. You just came to my cave for a while, and you're already snatching my wine? Bah, don't scare other people's children. Zhuo Minghui spat and said, Xiao Hua is not someone else. What's wrong with letting him drink? Hee, madam, as long as it's not for Qian Xinghua. Oh, there's something I forgot to tell madam. Helplessly suddenly thought of something and said, I was wondering why Qian Xinghua hasn't come here to drink wine for so many years. So something happened. TSK. Xiao Hua smacked his lips and was very disdainful. He knew that helplessly must have something to do with Qian Xinghua. Therefore, he didn't mention it until now and pretended to forget. What? Something happened to Qian Xinghua? Zhuo Minghui was stunned and asked anxiously. Fine, you see I was just talking about Qian Xinghua. Look at how anxious you are. Helplessly said with a sullen face. And you said you never miss him? Zhuo Minghui's face was a bit unnatural. She glared at helplessly and said, Qian Xinghua is my junior brother. He has been with me since he was young. How can I not care? Since he was young? How can you not care? Helplessly said with a bit of jealousy and sarcasm. What? It's true. Zhuo Minghui's face also twitched and replied. Oh, so that's it. Xiao Hua now understood why helplessly didn't have a good tone towards Qian Xinghua. It seemed that there was a story between the three of them. At this time, Xiao Hua suddenly felt his sleeve being pulled. He looked down and saw Xiang Yang and Yin Qinglian had already stood up. It was Yin Qinglian who pulled Xiao Hua's sleeve and signaled him to quickly go out. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be slow. He used a bit of strength and slowly moved out of the cave. Unfortunately, he had just taken a few steps when helplessly shouted, Xiao Hua, tell me about your encounter with Qian Xinghua. Don't mention anything that Sect Master is worried about. Xiao Hua, you met Qian Xinghua? Zhuo Minghui asked curiously. This. Xiao Hua touched his nose and helplessly walked back. He had a strange expression and told the story again. However, he didn't tell the truth about the thunder-devouring bead. Oh, Qian Xinghua used the soul oblivion technique? Zhuo Minghui's face was extremely worried. Yes, Master knows. This is all Sect Master's guess. Disciple didn't see it. Xiao Hua smiled apologetically. Yeah, you can go. Zhuo Minghui waved her hand. Yes. Xiao Hua felt relieved and immediately left. He had just walked to the entrance of the cave when he heard Zhuo Minghui say in a low voice, Look at Qian Xinghua. He's younger than you, but his cultivation is higher than yours. Now, he actually made such a great contribution to our Imperial Thunder sect. Look at you. You were on duty in Myriad Thunder Valley. Why did this old lady like you back then? You must have been possessed by a ghost. What contribution did he make? If it wasn't for my disciple, his things would have been stolen long ago. He wouldn't have had time to use the soul oblivion technique, It's all because of Qian Xinghua's things that you accepted him as your disciple. Xiao Hua had a strange expression on his face as he fled out of the cave. Xiang Yang and his wife were already waiting at the entrance. Both of them also had strange expressions on their faces. Xiang Yang didn't say much. With a wave of his hand, he flew away with Xiao Hua. Master and Master's wife are like this. After they sat down in the cave, Xiang Yang let out a sigh of relief and said with a smile, it said that Master's wife was an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator like Master. Not only was she as beautiful as a flower, but her cultivation was also higher than Master's. She was a top disciple from converted Thunder Palace. Many disciples wanted to dual cultivate with Master's wife, including Qian Xinghua. However, Master's wife took a fancy to Master and followed Master to Myriad Thunder Valley. Hundreds of years have passed since then. Master and Mistress often bicker, so they'll forget about it soon. Yin Qinglian took out some of the spirit wine she brewed herself and agreed. Master and Master's wife don't have any children. Xiao Hua smelled a very fragrant aroma. He felt that this spirit wine was different from what he imagined. He took a sip and said, if they had children, they wouldn't quarrel anymore, right? While he was speaking, a burning spirit qi rushed out from his dantian, causing his face to turn red. That spirit qi rushed into his meridians, forcing Xiao Hua to quickly use his mental cultivation method. Little junior brother, you can only taste the true flavor of this spirit wine if you don't use your mental cultivation method. Xiang Yang's voice sounded in Xiao Hua's ears. Oh, Xiao Hua put away his mental cultivation method and let the spirit qi move along his meridians. It was also strange. Along with the movement of the spirit qi, Xiao Hua's mind was rushed up to the 9 heavens. Then it quickly fell back down. When it fell back into his body, it was like flowing water. When the spirit qi disappeared into his meridians, Xiao Hua let out a sigh of relief. His whole body was comfortable. He didn't even want to raise his little finger. He smiled and said, the methods of immortals are indeed different. Hee, your senior sister-in-law's spirit wine is nothing. The spirit wine brewed by Master's wife can make one's mind go up and down. That's what I call satisfying. Xiang Yang said in a low voice, unfortunately, it's monopolized by Master. Even I rarely drink it. It's because your cultivation is too low. You couldn't get the thunder-amplifying fruit from the 10,000 Thunder Valley, so I could only use other spirit fruits to replace it. If you could pick the thunder-amplifying fruit, you could also drink the same spirit wine. Yin Qinglian said unhappily. Xiang Yang didn't refute and said, go to the inner room and take out the mental cultivation method. Okay. Yin Qinglian nodded and entered. Xiang Yang's cave was much smaller than the one in Helplessness, but it was also very clean. There were also many things. However, there were 2 holes in the stone wall, which were different from the restriction in Helplessness's cave. Not long after, Yin Qinglian came out with a booklet in her hand and handed it to Xiang Yang. Xiang Yang flipped through it and handed it to Xiao Hua, saying, take it. This is the method to refine a magic tool that you wanted just now. Xiao Hua was stunned and hurriedly pushed it away, saying, didn't Master say to wait until I built my foundation? Eldest senior brother doesn't need to make things difficult for me. I told you to take it, so take it. Xiang Yang said with a straight face, Master already said that I'll give you pointers on the cultivation method before you built your foundation. I just took out a mental cultivation method, and you don't want it? Then, many thanks, eldest senior brother. Xiao Hua said with a smile. What's there to be polite about? If there's anything you don't understand, don't hesitate to ask me. Xiang Yang said with a smile. Master was right. The lesson of building your foundation for 50 years is enough for you to learn. Xiang Yang's smile was bitter. Xiao Hua wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. He could only put the booklet into his storage bag and said with a smile, it's getting late. Eldest senior brother should take me to the Jade Archive Hall. Don't let them miss me. They dare. Although Xiang Yang said that, he didn't dare to be negligent. He stood up and said, Qinglian, I'll take Xiao Hua back to Zhenlei Palace. You can cultivate by yourself first. And you two go. Xiao Hua, come over when you have time. Yin Xinglian smiled and sent the two of them out of the cave. She then reminded Xiang Yang, "It's fine. Come back early, don't." She wanted to say something, but stopped. Xiang Yang said with a smile, "Don't worry, I won't bicker with them." Xiao Hua listened with a strange expression. He really didn't understand what they were talking about. Chapter 1542. When Xiao Hua arrived at Jianlei Palace with the sun, it was already noon. Under the bright sun, Jianlei Palace appeared resplendent on the mountain peak. There were still many young disciples shuttling back and forth in Jianlei Palace. Some were busy, while some were leisurely. In short, it was a warm scene. Within Jianlei Palace, there was a very deep and quiet place. Two bored disciples were standing in front of a simple and unadorned palace door. These two disciples were at Qi refining stage level 12. They were tall and straight, with a face as white as jade. Occasionally, there would be arrogance between their brows. With one look, one could tell that they were not easy to get along with. At this moment, the disciple on the left, wearing a white robe, looked at the empty corridor in front of him and couldn't help but curse. "Damn it! Where did that Xiao Hua run off to? It has already been 24 hours. Why hasn't anyone brought him to Jade Archive Hall? Was this guy killed to silence him?" He, Junior Jin Liang. Xiao Hua is the #1 disciple in this year's disciple selection. He has some tricks up his sleeves. How could he be killed silently in the Imperial Thunder sect? Bullshit. He is just a bullshit. I heard from the disciples that came to Jade Archive Hall yesterday that this guy is just a loose cultivator. The disciples of the other clans all keep their number plates as favors, but he stupidly took it himself. If that's the case, then naturally he is the #1 disciple. But how much is this #1 disciple? Don't you think so, Senior Jinming? That means this Xiao Hua is also a brainless guy. If they really fought, he wouldn't be a match for the other disciples. Of course, Senior Jin Liang, don't forget that this year we recruited 94 disciples. It is 10 times more than before. Those true experts will pass as long as they can and won't put in more effort. This is because they know that the true strength is during the disciple selection and the cultivation after entering Jianlei Palace. Without any support, it is impossible for him to establish himself in the Imperial Thunder sect. And I know, although Xiao Hua's results are good, his aptitude is not good. In the first round, he wasn't chosen by the other martial uncles. In the second round, he was barely chosen by Martial Uncle Wu Hai from the Myriad Thunder Valley. Speaking of Martial Uncle Wu Hai, why do I feel that Xiao Hua being chosen by Martial Uncle Wu Hai was a trap set by Martial Uncle Jin? What do you mean? Think about it. The disciple that Senior Uncle Helplessness had chosen was taken away by someone else. Senior Uncle Helplessness wanted to use this as a pretext to make a fuss. How could Senior Uncle Jin let him do as he wished? Wouldn't he have to quickly find a disciple who could be of use to him? If he doesn't give face to Jianlei Palace, will Senior Uncle Jin give him face? Jin Liang laughed and said, "Senior Brother Jin Ming is overthinking things. I don't think it's that complicated. Unfortunately, Martial Uncle only has one disciple. He is far from being able to accomplish anything. In this lifetime, he will only be in the early stage of foundation establishment. Perhaps Martial Uncle Jin is." While they were talking, the sound of footsteps could be heard from the empty corridor in the distance. "Shoo, I'm afraid that Martial Uncle Helplessness has brought Xiao Hua over." Jin Ming furrowed his brows and said, "Senior Martial Uncle, you're so annoying. You brought Xiao Hua out of the Spring Thunder Hall yesterday, so why are you only here now? Why are you?" It doesn't seem to be Senior Martial Uncle Helplessness. It's Xiang Yang, the one who built his foundation in 100 years. Jin Liang's eyes were sharp. Good. Although Jin Ming's mouth was full of praise, his eyes were filled with mockery. Xiao Hua followed Xiang Yang. After flying for a long time, he felt that Xiang Yang's flying technique wasn't very good. It was much worse than his own. He couldn't help but ask why Xiang Yang didn't use the lightning evasion. However, Xiang Yang smiled bitterly and explained the reason behind it. It turned out that although the lightning escape technique was a unique escape technique of the Imperial Thunder Sect, not every disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect had the opportunity to practice it. Only disciples with suitable physiques and profound cultivations could practice it. Moreover, the 8 great lightning palaces of the Imperial Thunder Sect all had the lightning evasion. Among them, the Heavenly Lightning Palace had the most complete lightning evasion. It was divided into 9 levels. The other lightning palaces either didn't have the complete lightning evasion, or it was modified according to the physique of the disciples. Thus, Xiaohua understood why Sect Master Qian Lazy was so happy to teach senior martial uncle Helplessness the lightning evasion of the Heavenly Lightning Palace. As the two talked, they arrived in front of the Jade Archive Hall. Looking at the spacious corridor, Xiaohua smiled and said, "Eldest martial brother, there were many disciples in the other palaces of the Heavenly Lightning Palace. Why didn't I see anyone here? Hee, I'm glad to let you know. The Jade Archive Hall is where the new disciples register. Every year, new disciples enter the Jade Archive Hall. Only disciples at the peak of the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm who break through to the foundation building realm can open the Jade Archive Hall. They have to leave their spirit tablets in the hall." "Is that so?" As Xiaohua walked, he saw Jin Liang and Jin Ming standing in front of the door. He asked curiously, "Is the registration done by Qi refining disciples?" "Of course not. They're only the gatekeepers," Xiang Yang said in a low voice. The two of them walked to the front of the Jade Archive Hall. Coincidentally, when the two of them were only a few feet away from the door, Jin Liang and Jin Ming looked at each other and clapped their hands. A 2-colored light flew out from each of their hands and struck the 2 sides of the Jade Archive Hall's door. Shua! A 4-colored light swept down from the door and sealed the door in the blink of an eye. The two of them didn't even look at Xiaohua and Xiang Yang and were about to leave. Xiaohua didn't understand. Xiang Yang, on the other hand, was very anxious. He hurriedly took a few steps forward and shouted, "Martial nephews, I brought Xiaohua to the Jade Archive Hall to register." "Why did Martial nephews close the Jade Archive Hall?" "Martial uncle, are you Xiaohua's master?" Jin Liang asked with a smile. "I of course not." Xiang Yang smiled apologetically and said, "But I was following master's orders. Since martial uncle isn't Xiaohua's master, how can you bring Xiaohua to register?" Jin Ming said with a fake smile, "It's better to wait until martial uncle cultivates to the late stage of foundation establishment and has the qualifications to choose disciples. Then you can bring your own disciple to register." These words were originally spoken with a normal tone, but when it came out of Jin Ming's mouth and entered Xiang Yang's ears, it already changed its meaning. It was a pun within a pun. Xiang Yang's expression changed, and his eyes were about to spit fire. However, he slightly turned his body and looked at Xiaohua, whose face was as calm as water. He sighed in his heart and forced a smile on his face. He said in a low voice, "I am Xiang Yang, a disciple of the Thunder Palace's 10,000 Thunder Valley. Because Master is busy in the 10,000 Thunder Valley, he didn't have time to spare. Thus, he ordered I to bring Junior Martial Brother here to register. My Imperial Thunder Sect doesn't have a rule that requires a master to bring a disciple here to register, right? Normally, when the masters come to Thunder Palace, they would bring their disciples here. I am also an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator, so I can barely register. Martial Uncle Xiang, it's easy for you to say. Are you the guard of Jade Archive Hall, or am I the guard? Do you know the rules of Jade Archive Hall, or am I the one who knows the rules of Jade Archive Hall? I have been on guard here for many years. Every year, there would be masters bringing their disciples here to register. I have never heard of an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator bringing a disciple here to register. But 10 years ago, I indeed saw it with my own eyes." Xiang Yang was a little anxious. Martial Uncle Xiang, I saw it 10 years ago. However, I only came to Jade Archive Hall 9 years ago. I don't know about that kind of thing. Jin Ming still had a fake smile on his face. Please return to Martial Uncle Xiang. Next year at this time, Martial Uncle Xiang will bring Xiao Hua here. Next year? Xiao Hua was stunned. His expression didn't change. You see, you also know that there isn't enough time. Today's matter is something I don't understand and didn't explain it clearly to Master. I hope the two of you can make an exception. If we register another year later, won't we delay Xiao Hua's cultivation for a year? This is not appropriate. You also know it's not appropriate? Jin Ming said angrily. If you know it's not appropriate, why didn't you come here yesterday? Why did you make us wait here for 24 hours? If you know it's not appropriate, why didn't the master come and send a disciple instead? Isn't this not taking Jade Archive Hall seriously? Xiang Yang looked left and right. He clapped his hands and took out a few high-grade spirit stones from his storage bag. He quietly handed them over. His face was already red. He smiled and said, "This has nothing to do with my master. It's All Eye's fault for making things difficult for the two of you. These spirit stones can be considered as Eye's compensation." Martial Uncle Xiang is quite polite. When Jin Liang saw this, he reached out his hand to remember it. Weighing the spirit stones in his hand, he casually waved his hand, causing the high-grade spirit stones to scatter to the ground. With a cold expression, he said, "What a pity, it's only a few high-grade spirit stones." Martial Uncle Xiang, it's fine if your Myriad Thunder Valley is poor, but don't treat Jade Archive Hall as beggars. Even if you kneel down and give these spirit stones to Jade Archive Hall won't accept them. Xiang Yang's face became redder and redder. However, just as his anger rose, he forced it down. It's All Eye's fault, it's All Eye's fault. Xiang Yang was so angry that he forgot to use a spell. He squatted down and picked up the spirit stones. Damn it, you've gone too far. Just as Xiang Yang squatted down, Xiao Hua finally couldn't take it anymore. At this moment, he understood the meaning of Yin Xinglian's words when Xiang Yang came out. Thinking of eldest senior brother's honest appearance, he was actually forced into such a state by these two 12th layer Qi refining juniors. Xiao Hua's temper, which had been ignited long ago, finally exploded. A piece of trash that no one wants. You're actually so arrogant? Hearing Xiao Hua's angry shout, Jin Liang slightly tilted his head and scolded with a smile. You're just a rogue cultivator with no reason. You think you could be arrogant just because you got first place this time? Hearing this, Xiao Hua was furious. Chapter 1543. Mercy my ass. He scolded helplessly. I just wanted to find a helper, but the others were all chosen, so I had no choice but to pick you. You didn't even try to live up to my expectations. You spent 50 years to reach Foundation establishment, and now? Forget it. Fortunately, Xiao Hua is here, so I can finally hold my head high. 50 years? Xiao Hua secretly stuck out his tongue in his heart. If Xiang Yang used 50 years to reach Foundation establishment, even if he was only 35 years old when he entered the Imperial Thunder Sect, he would be 85 years old now. What about his cultivation after Foundation establishment? No wonder he looks so old. Yes, with little junior brother, Master doesn't need to lose face anymore. Xiang Yang wasn't angry at all and smiled apologetically. Forget it. Let's go. He waved his sleeve helplessly and said, I'm afraid your master's wife and the others are waiting anxiously. Yes. Do you need me to send them a message? Xiang Yang was still smiling. Master's wife? Them? Xiao Hua was stunned and secretly said, could it be that Master has concubines? Thinking of concubines, Xiao Hua suddenly shouted for no reason as if he remembered something. What's wrong? Xiao Hua looked at Xiao Hua strangely. That, Master, disciple wants to ask you, a disciple of a gold core stage cultivator, how should I address them? Xiao Hua muttered. Nonsense. That depends on the disciple's cultivation level. Xiao Hua scolded Xiao Hua softly and rolled his eyes. He also thought of something and said with a smile, if they're Qi refinement like you, Of course, they should be called junior sister or senior sister. If they're foundation establishment, then they could be called martial uncle. That's good. Xiao Hua's heart was at ease. Looking at Xiao Hua's somewhat ambiguous gaze, his face was somewhat unnatural. What? Did a gold core stage grandmaster go to the Imperial Thunder Palace to recruit disciples this time? Xiang Yang said with some astonishment. This is extremely rare. That boy who was chosen has some luck. Idiot, it's a girl. Xiao Hua scolded Xiao Hua, but then he helplessly slapped his head and said, "Io, damn it, there are too many things today. I actually forgot to bring Xiao Hua to the Jade Archive Hall." Right, at this moment, Xiao Hua also thought that he hadn't gone to the Jade Archive Hall yet and hadn't been registered. No wonder he always felt that something was missing. Forget it, forget it. Let's go to the Immortal's Cave first. Helplessly, he thought for a moment and said, "I'll ask your eldest senior brother to bring you there later." Yes, disciple will follow master's orders. Xiang Yang bowed and said, helplessly. He seemed to be used to Xiang Yang's respect. Without saying anything, he waved his hand. "Let's go, Xiao Hua. Let me see if you have truly comprehended the lightning avoidance technique." "Yes, master." Xiao Hua wasn't afraid of anything. After helplessly flying away, he asked Xiang Yang to go first and followed behind the two. Seeing that Xiao Hua was very respectful towards him, Xiang Yang was also very happy. He slowly flew together with Xiao Hua and secretly used his magic power to help Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua's heart felt warm, but he didn't say anything. He only secretly nodded towards Xiang Yang to express his thanks. When they arrived at last night's place, helplessly stopped. He looked at Xiao Hua and signaled him to fly forward. Xiao Hua was very free and flew forward without consulting anyone. Behind him, Xiang Yang was somewhat worried. Thump! Thump! Several fierce sounds of his heartbeat resounded. Xiao Hua hurriedly circulated his magic power and displayed the spell formula he had comprehended yesterday. Sure enough, the sound immediately disappeared. Soon after, Xiao Hua stealthily released his perception. The monstrous thunder waves once again attacked him. However, as Xiao Hua sped up the spell formula, his perception was like a small boat freely cruising through the thunder waves, no longer suffocating. Great! Xiao Hua's face revealed a happy expression. He withdrew his perception and turned his head with a smile. "It's very useful, master." Ha ha! Helplessly's originally worried heart immediately relaxed. He smiled and said, "Like I said, this time this old man definitely didn't make a mistake. My myriad Thunder Valley will definitely shine in the Imperial Thunder Sect. No, in the country of Shi." Xiao Hua curled his lips. It seemed that in the Spring Thunder Palace, Helplessly didn't want to accept him as a disciple several times. "Hey, they're here too?" Helplessly smiled and looked into the distance again. This time, Xiao Hua didn't use his divine sense. He just silently followed behind helplessly. After flying forward for the time it took to brew a cup of tea, two women appeared in the distant sky. The woman in front was at the late Foundation establishment stage. She looked to be about 50 years old, but her skin was fair and her black hair was like clouds. Her every movement was quite elegant, and her colorful clothes were very cheering. The person behind her was a female cultivator about 60 years old. Her hair was grizzled, and her cultivation was probably at the middle Foundation establishment stage. She wore a Cyan Taoist robe that didn't look gorgeous. "Hey, this..." Xiao Hua's eyes flashed. He somewhat understood. Sure enough, when they approached, the well-behaved Xiang Yang stepped forward and bowed. "Greetings, master's wife." The female cultivator in front smiled and nodded. The female cultivator behind her flew to the side and landed beside Xiang Yang. "Disciple Xiao Hua greets master's wife." Xiao Hua immediately stepped forward and bowed. "Hee, you're called Xiao Hua? You seem to be a very young child." The female cultivator smiled and used her hand to support Xiao Hua. She then looked at Helplessly and said, "Congratulations, husband, for taking in a disciple as desired." Helplessly stroked the beard on his chin, very proud. He pointed at the female cultivator and said, Xiaohua, this is your master's wife. Her name is Zhuo Minghui. Back then, she was Ba. Without waiting for helplessly to finish, Zhuo Minghui spat and said with a slightly red face, You old thing, you've been saying this for over 100 years. You still don't know when to get tired. Hee hee. Of course I don't get tired. Helplessly shrunk his neck and said in a low voice. Xiaohua laughed inwardly. After he got up, he turned around and bowed to the other female cultivator. Disciple Xiaohua greets senior sister. I don't dare. Junior martial brother, please rise. That female cultivator saw that Xiaohua was young and also had a smile on her face. She stretched out her hand, but looked at Xiangyang. Xiaohua is only 25 years old. He's just a child. Xiangyang understood the meaning of his dual cultivation partner. As he spoke to that female cultivator, he said to Xiaohua, This is elder brother's dual cultivation partner. Her name is Yin Qinglian. Hearing that Xiaohua was only 25 years old, Yin Qinglian's eyes were filled with astonishment. She then didn't hide anything and reached out to help Xiaohua up. With a pat of her hand, she took out a jade bottle from her storage pouch and handed it over. She said with a smile, Senior sister doesn't have anything good here. Take this foundation-building pill. It'll be useful when you build your foundation. Xiaohua's heart warmed. He took it with his hand and said with a smile, With senior sister's foundation-building pill, how could I not dare to build my foundation? Otherwise, I'd be angered by the heavens and resented by men. Ha ha ha. Not only did Yin Qinglian cover her mouth, but Zhuo Minghui also covered her mouth and laughed. She said, This child is much stronger than Xiangyang. Our myriad thunder valley won't be boring anymore. Soon after, she said somewhat apologetically, Xiaohua, Master's wife also prepared a foundation-building pill, but Qinglian already gave it to me. It's not good for Master's wife to take it out. Let's wait until we return to the Immortal's Cave. Okay, Master's wife. I like everything you give me. Xiaohua beamed with joy. It naturally liked something even better than a foundation-building pill. Let's go. Helpless waved his hand and took the lead with Zhuo Minghui. Xiangyang and his wife weren't in a hurry. Xiangyang waved his hand, and just like before, he took Xiaohua to his right, while Yin Qinglian flew to his left. The group of 5 flew towards Helpless Immortal's Cave in Myriad Thunder Valley. After flying for about 4 hours, a tall mountain peak appeared in front of them. Halfway up the mountain peak, a vigorous mountain ape was standing in front of an Immortal's Cave in a very serious manner. Helpless waited for them to descend from the sky. That mountain ape jumped in front of Helpless and waved its arm, pointing here and there as if it was saying something. Helpless stretched out his hand and patted the mountain ape's head. He took out some kind of medicinal pill and threw it to the mountain ape. The mountain ape nimbly caught a handful and threw it into its mouth. Then, very satisfied, it retreated. Immediately after, it looked at Xiangyang and the others who slowly landed on the ground. The gaze it used to look at Xiaohua was very vigilant. Xiaoshan, this is Ai's little junior brother. In the future, you two can get closer. Xiangyang pulled Xiaohua's hand and said to the mountain ape very intimately. It was unknown whether that mountain ape really understood or was pretending to understand. It nodded in a very serious manner and even stretched out its hand to touch Xiaohua's arm, as if it was familiar with him. Xiaohua scratched his head. He could only say the same thing he said to Little White Dragon. Hello, Xiaoshan. Xiaoshan blinked its red eyes, as if it understood. Xiaohua was happy. Just as he was about to say something, who knew that Xiaoshan would squeak and scurry into the forest beside the cave. Hee, I'm afraid it saw some pheasant. Xiangyang said with a smile. This guy likes to roast things the most. Xiaohua's perception swept over. Indeed, that mountain ape was chasing a fat pheasant. Following Xiangyang and his wife into the cave, Xiaohua subconsciously nodded. This was the place that he wanted to cultivate. Helpless Cave was quite big. There were many moonlight stones around the stone walls, illuminating the entire cave. The entire cave was abnormally clean. Inside the cave, there were jade tables and jade chairs, as well as some seemingly ordinary things. In the corner, there were two mirrors that flickered with brilliance. They seemed to be the entrance to the back of the cave. Xiaohua, sit anywhere you want. Yin Qinglian helplessly sat on the seat of honor with Zhuo Mingwei. Xianyang also sat on the chair beside them. Yin Qinglian smiled and said to Xiaohua. She then walked towards the light in the corner of the cave. When she got close, she took a step and disappeared from the stone wall. Xiaohua looked around, then picked up Xiangyang's hand and sat down. Not long after, Yin Qinglian came over from the other side of the stone wall, holding a jade tray in her hand. On top of it was a teapot, as well as a few small cups. Beside the teapot, there were also two plates. Inside the plates were lush green fruits. Yin Qinglian placed the fruits and the cup filled with tea in front of Helpless. She smiled and walked in front of Xiaohua. Little junior brother, come and taste Master's Cloud Mist tea and my 10,000 Thunder Valley's green thunder fruit. This is something that you can't eat anywhere else. Many thanks, senior sister. Xiaohua smiled and took the green thunder fruit. He picked one up and put it in his mouth. Zzz, a feeling like lightning struck came from his mouth. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.